Broadcasting for our meeting of Monday, 23rd of June 2025. A reminder to all those in attendance that you should refrain from making any defamatory statements, and also a reminder to the gallery that the use of a recording device is a breach of the Code of Meeting Practice, and anyone contravening or attempting to contravene will be expelled from the meeting. I'd like to now do our acknowledgement of country and our prayer, and I'll just ask all the councillors to rise. Yass Valley Council recognises the Ngunnawal people, the traditional custodians of the land, water and sky. We pay our respect to their elders past, present and future emerging leaders, and we extend our respect to other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who live in the Yass Valley local government area. And now the prayer. Let us be still and remember the presence of God as we commence our meeting. Let us together pray for guidance and help, or take this moment to reflect. Almighty God, we ask your blessing upon this council. Direct and prosper our deliberations to the true welfare of Australia and the people of Yass Valley. Amen. Councillors, we have two apologies this afternoon from Councillor Cameron and Councillor Rothwell, who are unable to attend. Can I have an acceptance of those apologies? So moved Councillor McGrath, seconded Councillor Burgess. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Do we have any declarations of pecuniary interests or special disclosures? Councillors, I have a declaration for 6.5, the Local Roads and Community Infrastructure Funding, LRCI Phase 4, as one of the options in the business paper but not included in the resolution. Involves the Anglican parish land, of which a family member is a board member of that parish. So I'll be declaring a non-significant, non-pecuniary interest for that item and removing myself from the room. Okay, councillors, may I have, is there any other declaration? Okay, thank you, councillors. If I could have someone confirm the minutes from our meeting held on the 22nd of May. So moved Councillor Burgess and seconded Councillor Cherry. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Okay, now moving on to the mayoral minutes. Our first mayoral minute is to note the urgent advocacy about potential harmful impact of further renewable energy turbine projects in Yass Valley and support further representation. Let me just get up to that page. Councillors, the mayoral minute is before you. It includes steps 1 to 5, and I believe Councillor Cherry, you have an amendment, if I can put you to.
Madam Mayor, if I may.
Yeah.
Katie, do you mind putting it up on the screen and I can read it out for one knowledge? Just an amendment to paragraph 6, no changes to 1 through 5. Paragraph 6 to read. Council reaffirms its general support for responsible renewable energy development in the Yass Valley, consistent with both the New South Wales Government's energy transition objectives and Council's own adopted renewable energy development projects policy, and advocates for stronger community consultation and improved planning coordination, particularly for projects proposed outside of designated renewable energy zones. Council encourages mechanisms to address the cumulative and localised impacts of these developments while supporting the broader shift to a low emissions future. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Cherry. In light of your amendment, if I put that as moved by myself and seconded.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Councillors, an unprecedented moment in time has come upon us in Yass Valley. I think the advent of the HumeLink transmission line has certainly brought about a lot of prospecting companies beyond what I think we could have anticipated for Yass Valley. I thought that the 4 already proposed back in the 2013 to 2020 mark would be it. But I think this is just the beginning of projects that are looking towards our zone because of Hughley. I think the renewable energy sector has a place in our energy market, but Yass Valley, I think, has done a lot of heavy lifting already, not just for turbines, but also with the two major state significant solar farms in our region already. Certainly the distress in the communities that we visited as part of our budget roadshow when we went out to the one-on-one meeting where we had residents from Bookham and Barry there as well, when we were doing our cloud generated ideas on the page about what they loved about their area and what they were concerned about. The turbines came up very, very high in their thought process during those meetings. So obviously we've heard from Mr. Keith Rosario regarding his concerns. I think it's quite a privilege that we have the space sector in Yass Valley, and this is a company that certainly punches above its weight in terms of being a good social community citizen. They've sponsored community events, youth events, the amount of work they do with the schools and PhD students and defence cadets coming in. I was quite amazed actually when I read the detail of just how much Singular Space gives back to our community here. And I think that's the kind of sector that when it embeds itself in our community and makes themselves a good community citizen and are good custodians of the land where they hold their technology out there and aren't in direct conflict with the agricultural sector. I think that's the kind of industry that we could welcome with open arms. The energy sector's view on Yass Valley as a place to host these turbines of great scale is of obvious concern to our community. This is a scale that we haven't seen before, and if it's anything like what we've seen in the past, the amendments to these renewable energy projects, what they were actually approved of in terms of scale and what was actually built was quite larger because of the organic generation of change from once a turbine site has been approved to where the actual technology ends up has been quite something to see in terms of the turbines, the blades in themselves that came down Lachlan Valley Way. That was something unprecedented in my time on council. But I'm certainly open to hear what councillors have to say as well, because this is the first time that this council has actually had our renewable development energy policy tested, where we've said we're at saturation point. Councillor Cherry, would you like to speak?
Thank you. At the outset, can I just say I would like to commend your leadership and swift advocacy in responding to the concerns raised by the residents of Bounding, Bookham, Bynalong, Wee, Jasper and Gundaroo. By bringing this matter forward so promptly, you've given Council an opportunity to show unified support for our communities and to discuss an issue of significant strategic importance with the seriousness it deserves. Madam Mayor, fellow councillors, my intent this evening is not to diminish the sentiments of those residents. I acknowledge and empathise with their frustration and I support their right to seek clarity and reassurance about how major projects may impact their lives, livelihoods and the fabric of their towns. I also want to acknowledge the number of residents who have come in here tonight to present their views during the public forum to express overwhelming support for this mayoral minute. That said, I believe the original motion as it stands runs a risk of being misinterpreted as broadly opposing renewable energy investments in the Yass Valley. I don't believe that accurately reflects either this council's position or the broader direction we are compelled to adopt as part of our state and nation's commitment to transitioning our energy system. The amendment I propose this evening strikes a more measured approach. It ensures that Yass Valley Council continues to advocate for community interests while also aligning with the New South Wales and federal government's renewable energy strategy, which includes a net zero emissions target by 2050 and a clear role for regional communities in achieving it. Critically, this motion explicitly references Council's renewable energy developments projects policy That policy was adopted in 2023 to guide how this chamber assesses and engages with major energy project proposals, not to reject them outright, but to ensure they meet local expectations on land use compatibility, consultation, environmental safeguards and economic benefit. Ultimately, I believe this motion better reflects who we are as a council, not anti-renewables, but committed to representing our communities with accountability, seeking responsible development outcomes, and engaging constructively in the state's broader energy transition. It positions us as credible partners in shaping a future that balances regional integrity with national responsibility. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Chan. Do we have any other speakers to the Mayoral Minute?
May I ask a question, Madam Mayor,
Certainly.
of your minute? And you're likely to understand the nature of this question that's been raised before, and I've raised this with some trepidation last time I was told to return to New Zealand for asking similar questions. But can you just explain what the urgency is here? That's what I'm trying to work through. Why do we need this decision to be made today? Why could it not be made on the 24th of July?
Thank you for your question, Councillor Carter. So I've given notice and brought this forward as a Mayoral Minute inside the business paper, which I think is ample notification. And I would point your attention towards particularly the opportunity to contact the Department of Planning before wind prospects Bentonine Seas are issued, which gives us an opportunity to establish more rigorous SEERs that take into account the proximity of the villages and the 1,000 points of sensitive contact, which is our residents between Bounding and Bynalong. The unique operating environment of the space sector that requires low EMI and dark skies. That is an established business since 2016, with Mr. Rosario holding that land since 2002. And I can only imagine the sacrifices that were made in order to launch a space industry sector business here in Yass Valley, and I imagine that took a lot of planning. And it gives us an opportunity to engage with our community, engage with our ministers who represent us at the state and the federal level at a time when this company is in its early scoping phase, but has made the decision to contact residents and hold community engagement sessions, which, to be frank, the community are severely disappointed with. The description of 2 desks out in the open with some candy on them, no written material to be provided to residents to take away and digest, no turbine position scoping already done so that residents could have an understanding of the placement of these on those properties. And when questioned with, has there been a view shed analysis done yet, or any of those items that would be of interest to the space sector, nothing was available. So I think if the company itself is on the front foot in terms of trying to tick its boxes for community engagement, we should certainly be on the front foot in asking for that bar to be raised on behalf of our community. That is not a renewable energy zone. No doubt does not have the rigorous community consultation and neighbourhood precinct agreements that would be in place in such a zone, if that assists.
Can I ask a follow-up question? Sorry. So my question was, what is the urgency? And the question is about why, when is the SEERs to be issued?
So, in order to the first part of your question, Councillor Carter, you've been given notice in the business paper of the Mayoral Minute. This is business as usual for councils. This is how Mayoral Minutes work. I have not brought this 20 minutes before the meeting. You've been given a full business paper agenda's notification. And if I could seek some further clarification from our governance officer on that matter.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It is completely up to the will of the meeting on whether or not to proceed with discussion, but as the Mayor has pointed out, there has been the same notice given in relation to this Mayoral Minute as any other matter that is listed on the business paper, so I think that should be borne in mind.
So my question though, and we could debate the policy of this, and 9.9 clearly suggests that the purpose of this clause is urgent and requires the decision of the council before the next scheduled ordinary meeting of the council. Not a question about the mechanism by which it's brought into the agenda, that's a debate for the chamber. The question was, quite specifically, when is the CS due to the issue? Thank you, Madam.
I would love that crystal ball, Councillor Carter. So when the company applies to have the CS issued, that is a matter for the Department of Planning, being a state significant project is my understanding. However, having had a discussion with a senior advisor to Minister Scully recently at the CRJO opportunity to meet with the ministers, I was advised by that senior advisor to seek early review of the requirements for the CS so that they are robust and reflect what's happening on the ground here in Yass Valley.
Just a follow-up question about 7.1 though, in relation to this, because in 7.1 you're going to move that we need to find out about renewable energy projects in Yass Valley. You've made a number of comments tonight that were already at saturation. Could you explain the difference between those two points, Madam?
Happy to. So as you can see from the timeline given in the narrow minute, things have had to move quite quickly. So the timeline began when I was notified of the wind prospect Bendening proposal by a community member on the 13th of May. We brought our business paper forward from its usual time, and so during that month I've had to establish what are the sensitive time nodes on the timeline for being effective advocate for our community. So I've lodged a notice of motion in the meantime to get it into the business paper, specifically on the Bendening issue. The items of urgency required a mere minute, but it's very prudent for us as a community to understand the whole impact on Yass Valley with companies like Bondo, Squadron, Goldwind and Wind Prospect are just among the ones that I'm aware of, looking for opportunity to set up in Yass Valley. If we do the figures on those, that's potentially over 400 turbines on the horizon, and that's on top of what we have established as our saturation point in our renewable energy development policy. So that's not including the 4 that have already been approved in past terms of council by the New South Wales Department of Planning.
One further question, but it notes in here, in point 4 of your motion, that you have already sought an urgent review from the New South Wales Department of Planning. When did it happen? And it would have been nice to have got a copy of that.
Thank you, Councillor Carter. The paperwork on that was able to be finalised this morning. I thank Mr. Keith Rosario for submitting his advocacy so that could go in carriage with that. And the opportunity to lodge that I became aware of that during the meeting with the CRJO with New South Wales Parliament. So as you can see, it's been a very busy time, and I'm doing my best to represent our community in this role and be transparent in doing so. And I think it's important that at every opportunity we bring our advocacy to the table and have consensus on what's going forward. I think that's a good role for a mayor to do. However, the preparation of nine letters to go out. One's already left my desk this morning to Minister Scully, and the rest are copies that will be going to a variety of federal and state ministers, from space and innovation to agricultural ministers to regional and local government ministers, who all have a vested interest in finding the best way forward for us, because this is unprecedented, that human is coming through and that we are going to receive much more interest than I think Yass Valley can handle, and we will need representation at state and federal levels on this issue. All right, Councillor Flannery.
Firstly, thank you for your minute. I am very supportive of trying to be on the front foot. I'm just wondering, in a basic way, is it strong enough? Because representation, I'm sure ministers are going to get representation from the other side saying we need this and we are a reasonably small jurisdiction. If you're trying to outwardly say we support renewables, but we want our community and we want, the elements within the community, and one of the items that's pointed out is dark skies. How are we as a community also putting forward that we value those things such as dark skies and other items, not just kind of backing behind the non-renewables? So my question is there a way that we could also, as a jurisdiction, look at other elements to support our community in the environmental context that also support our endeavours, and just checking if this is strong enough?
I might seek some advice from our executive as to what other planning instruments are in our toolkit that could be reviewed and made more robust to protect those.
We can have it another time.
No, through you, Madam Mayor, look, I'd have to take that on notice. I am aware there is a state planning policy, or there used to be, around dark skies related to Warren bungles, so that sort of provision does apply. I think I'd have to do a little bit of research and assessment to be able to give that advice to you.
Councillor Butler.
Just a comment, and thank you to all the community members that came and spoke this afternoon, in relation to this. I was just thinking, as Councillor Carter was speaking about the urgency of it, and what I took from that was sometimes we need to look at it from the perspective of what the people spoke about tonight, is that on the IPNR roadshows that you have all been on the ground, you heard from the community members their mental health is deteriorating. This is creating a social issue out there. So that makes it urgent. Right now, it's urgent for them to have some peace of mind, to go, someone is listening, someone's doing something. It's not just because it might come next week and then it's urgent. This is urgent now for our community members. Thank you.
Councillors, do we have any further comments?
Sure. I went to the meeting with Barry, there was about 150 people there. You heard what the community wanted, they want it stopped. And I think this Murray will go a bit of the way, but it's probably not the right thing. And the Yass Council can't do a lot about it, but it can do this. But it can't object to it, or it can object to it, but it can't stop it, because the state government will.
All right, councillors, thank you for your support on this mayoral minute. Attending that meeting with Councillor Burgess, the community was clearly in distress. This is an unprecedented amount between some historic villages of Bowling and Waitangi. And today I was looking at a map which showed where Banjo Patterson's childhood home was on Illinois Station, a stone's throw from this area. And it really struck me as to exactly what I love about Yass Valley and exactly why we've got so much at stake here as a community. And if I was one of the farmers raising sheep and cattle on land in the surroundings, to learn that these turbines shed 60 kilograms of microplastics annually, and that may stop them from ticking the right boxes for the high standard of food production. I realise this is a brave new world that we're in, and I'm certain that I do not know all the risks, and we may not until these turbine sites have been on the ground for many years. But it's this moment in time where I think we all have to say, if not us, who will defend our community? And this is our chance to show them that there's more at stake here than they might think. There are established industries and established communities that want to stay strong and do not want to be divided. And I'd like to thank all the members of the community who have written in letters. I've been forwarding them onto our customer service email to have them collated. And it's certainly galvanised me that this is a situation where there is no social licence for this particular project, and any other future project really does need to prove that it's got the support of the surrounding area. Thank you, councillors. We'll put this to the vote to adopt. All those in favour? That's councillors Butler, McGrath, Cherry, Jones, Burgess and Flannery. All those against? Councillor Carter against. Thank you, councillors. Moving on to item 5.2, the mayoral minute, the request for drought natural disaster declaration. Councillors, this is not dissimilar to the motion that's just gone before Snowy Valleys Council as well. To advocate for the immediate declaration of drought as a natural disaster, with 100% of Yass Valley now mapped by DPI as drought affected. To call for relief funding and vital transport subsidies for our farmers, to the New South Wales Minister for Agriculture, the Honourable Tara Moriarty, the New South Wales Minister for Recovery, the Honourable Janelle Saffin, the Federal Minister for Agriculture, the Honourable Julie Collins MP, and the relevant shadow portfolio members of Parliament. And to 3, collaborate with key agricultural and community organisations, including the National Farmers Federation, New South Wales Farmers and the Country Women's Association, and note our continued collaborative efforts as part of the Canberra Region Joint Organisation of Council's united push for the declaration of drought as a natural disaster. And I'll move the motion and I'll ask for Councillor Burgess's seconding. Thank you very much, Councillor. I'm very much appreciative of our collegiate approach to oral minutes. I'm going to ask Councillor Burgess to tell us what's happening on the ground.
I appreciate, Mayor, what you've done. Talk to the ministers, trying to get some subsidies for us rural people. It's not really a water drought for some people it is, but some people not. You go out my way of Kangaroo, it's bloody terrible. There's just all dirt out there. And now we've had these big frosts, it's worse, and the stock's got it hard, and it cost us a lot of money to feed and bring all the food in, and it's hard to get hay now, you've got to go miles to get hay. And because the transport's cost a lot of money. Anyway, if we can get this up, it'd be great, I think, for the rural people.
Thank you, Councillor Burgess. Do we have any other speakers?
Just a question, if I may, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Burgess.
Yes.
So it's clear you've been here longer than anyone, mate, and you've seen this in the past. What else, in light of obviously the question that Councillor Flannery asked before, and what you spoke about in the previous motion, what else can this change do to make sure that we get there?
Well, I think it just got to go back to the mayor all the time, because she's our leader.
Yep.
To keep at these ministers to see if we can get stuff done. I think that's the best way to do it.
Okay, that's
Can I give a brief comment? I think this is urgent. This is the very essence of what a mayoral minute should be about. This is important for what is the key driver of our Yass Valley. My thanks for your representation assesses to the issues. It's a serious problem. Thank you.
Councillors, just reflecting on recent conversations, we had, I think, all of 15 minutes with some of the ministers at the CRJO meeting at Parliament House, and would like to acknowledge Snowy Valley's Mayor Julia Ham, who joined me in pushing hard on championing this issue. We said if you can do one thing for us, if you can champion putting drought back on the table for natural disaster funding. It's great that the Prime Minister has released funding for financial counselling and for that resilience leadership training for our farmers, but there's no replacement for cash when you need it in terms of the fodder and the freight. And the fodder is getting so light on the ground, and a lot of it's going up north where they've had floods as well, because there's not fodder there either. And so it's a real issue, particularly if we need to send them north with the freight. And I was quite shocked when I looked back at the history. I went down a bit of a rabbit hole when I went looking on the DPI website about how long Yass had been in drought-affected state, all the way back to the previous spring. So that tells a story of there's only so long you can be resilient for, or build bigger barns for before you just run out of food in the paddocks for them. So I commend this motion to you councillors, that this is a disaster in every sense except its official designation. And I think we just need to do what we can to get these farmers what they need for the mounting freight bills and prevent the collapse of our farmers' herds, which is going to impact for years if we don't do something now. So I'll put this to the vote. Councillors, all those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay, the final two, the 5.3, the mayoral letter of congratulations to the Honourable Michael McCormack. Thank you, Councillor Burgess, for seconding that. And just noting, I met with Mr. McCormack today for a short cup of coffee. He is in the process of hunting for a Yass electoral office that will be open Monday to Friday, which is very, very exciting. And I wish him luck in securing a Main Street tenure. Councillors, can I have your support for that? All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Item 5.4, the mayoral minute, the letter of thanks and congratulations, and never let an opportunity to go past, but also advocacy request from Minister McBain. There's a letter attached to your business paper to review. Do we have any discussion on that? I'll move that. Seconded Councillor Butler. She was fast off the stocks there. Any discussion? Councillor Butler, I make it my point to add the component of the 750k. I do apologise for that oversight. Any questions? All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Moving on to the planning section of our business paper, item 6.1, the development application update for April and May. We have a recommendation that it be noted, so moved Councillor McGrath and seconded Councillor Flannery.
I also have a question.
I thought you might. Councillor McGrath, any comments? Councillor Flannery, your question.
Yes, it's just a query, and I wasn't at the planning meeting, so that's the meeting ahead of this, so it probably was answered then, so excuse me if it was. But I noticed that we've made an improvement in our DA assessment time, but we've kind of now plateaued out. And so what I was wondering is why we plateaued out, what's causing the change? Have we got another assessment officer? Because it seems now that we are at the same, we've got 140 in April, 140 in March, 142 in Feb. So we've been pretty consistent since January of 140-ish days for the assessment, and what is the reason for the big change or the big drop, and is there going to be any more improvement, or is that about where we're at, just so I can understand what caused the reduction, or what caused the improvement, I should say, in number of days the approval has taken, and are we looking to improve on that?
So the improvement, the plateau, and possible action. Okay. Could I ask for your assistance on that?
Yep, through you, Madam Mayor, thank you for your question, Councillor. So the improvements, the drop from 217 to 140 days has really come around refocusing administrative tasks back to administrative staff. So for a long time, planners have been responsible for doing things like stamping their plans, filing and putting together consents, and formatting and that sort of thing. That all those very administrative tasks have now moved across to the administrative team. which frees up the technical staff to continue to do assessment work rather than administrative work. The second part is we've been rejecting DAs at lodgement if they're not assessment ready. So we do a very quick review of the development application when it's lodged, and if it's not really ready to go, it is rejected and the applicant's asked to provide the information that we need to be able to lodge and assess. If we don't get responses for additional information within a reasonable timeframe, then we will refuse the DA now, or we will ask the applicant to withdraw the DA. When we do that, we do make an assessment of the information that have asked them to provide, and what is a reasonable timeframe in which to provide that. And there has been ongoing continuous improvement projects going on within the team just to make small gains in terms of days. They've done a lot of mapping of the processes and looking at how they can reduce the time for different parts of the process. The plateauing, I think part of it is attributed to you only need one very large development application, and when I'm saying, let's say the Murray Bateman Service Centre, which has been in for a couple of years, then that impacts on your turnaround times, and I would expect, given that we're supposed to be getting down to 115 days, I think that the development control team will continue to review the process to see if we can get them down to 115 days. They're very focused on that particular day, those days, and trying to pick up, that additional 25 days in the assessment.
So just to paraphrase, you've delineated tasks, you've done a process improvement, and has staff stabilised in that area, or have staff increased, or have staff increased in another area? Because effectively you're taking some work that the planners used to do back to the admin people, so where the admin people doing more things, like I'm just wondering.
Yep. So in the development control team, there is 5 development planning positions. One of those is currently vacant and has been vacant for some time. The administrative team did expand, and it's currently got 1 vacant position, and one of the staff members is about to go on 12 months leave, and we're just recruiting for that position at the moment. So, and part of it also is that with building certification, and this is not related to the pausing of the service, but they were doing mostly just building certification work, so a lot of the development application work that they had been doing had gone back to the planners, so they picked up additional applications as well.
We'll just get further comment from our CEO on that matter too.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to say thank you to Julie and to the staff involved. I think it's a great step forward for council. It shows council's commitment to continuous improvement. It also demonstrates to developers that council is decisive, that we're being active in that area, and we're doing everything we can. Even a rejection is a clear pathway forward for a developer, and it's really important that council provides that advice in a very timely manner. So I would just like to thank Julie and the planning team for their work in improving council's response time.
Councillor Carr.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Just a question actually to the Director of Planning and Environment. I'm just referring to the table that you have on page 34. And just, it's a question of clarification on how to read this table. So 87% of our applications are dealt with within 14 days. Is that the idea?
Yep.
And therefore we're one of 55% of all councils in New South Wales that are meeting that. And therefore we're currently slightly behind in terms of our assessment days. And in that sense, we're one of the 50% of councils that fall into that over time category. Is that correct?
Yep, so that table is taken directly from the league table.
Great, thanks very much for that clarification. Just want to congratulate you on the work. That's a significant decline over time here. It's pleasing to see. And I'm sure with our continued investment in the space, a focus on positive development for the region, then I'm sure this will continue to decline, despite the fact that it looks like it might be plateauing. There are some rather large decisions going through at the moment, which might explain some of that. But my congratulations to you and your team. Thanks very much.
Can I just say another council has contacted us to ask us how we've managed the lodgement days to be reduced.
Always a good sign.
Yeah.
keep that feather in that hat.
Yes.
Alright, councillors, any further debate? Okay, let's put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Councillors. Moving on to item 6.2, the modification of development consent. That's for Manton Park subdivision, stages 4 and 5, the 447 Yass Way Manton. We have a recommendation that it be modified. Do I have a mover? Councillors, do I have a motion? Okay, thank you, Councillor Butler and Councillor Carter. Any debate, councillors? Let's vote. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Item 6.3, the review of determination for the service departments on Keys Road, Murray Bateman. We have a recommendation that conditional development consent be issued for 2 service departments at lot 2 DP 797830 Keys Road, Murray Bateman. Councillor Cherry, do you have a motion?
Madam Mayor, I do, and I'd like to move an alternate motion, and allow me just to bring it up, so I know what we're talking about. Katie, do you mind making that? Okay, motion reads that council refuse development application DA 230239 for 2 service departments at lot 2 DP at 797830 Keys Road, Murray Bateman. The refusal is on the following grounds. A. Proposed development is not consistent with the objectives of RU1 Primary Production Zone under the Yass Valley Local Environmental Plan 2013. These objectives included protecting agricultural land, minimising land use conflict and maintaining the rural character of the area. New commercial users such as service departments can undermine these aims and are therefore inappropriate in zones intended primarily for sustainable primary production. B. This development is likely to negatively impact regionally significant tourism and agricultural businesses, including viticulture operations, and may be adversely impacted by incompatible neighbouring uses. And C. In accordance with section 4.15 of 1 Echo of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act 1979, the proposed development is not in the public interest, it has attracted substantial community opposition, and does not demonstrate a clear long-term benefit for the Murray Bateman community. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Cherry. Councillor Carter.
I'll second.
Okay, councillors, we have a motion. Councillor Cherry, would you like to speak to your
Thank you,
motion?
Madam Mayor. Yes, I would. I cannot, in good conscience, support this development application, and I wish to be crystal clear about my rationale. This application is fundamentally inconsistent with the purpose and objectives of RU1 primary production land as defined in the Yass Valley Local Environmental Plan of 2013. Those objectives are not vague or aspirational, they are prescriptive. They are not there to protect agricultural land, they are there to protect agricultural land, to minimise land use conflict, and to preserve the rural character of our landscape. This application does the opposite. This application proposes introducing service tourist accommodation into an area surrounded by productive vineyards and grazing operations. This introduces obvious risk, potential trespass, amenity complaints from guests unaccustomed to early morning spraying or harvesting, and these are well-known sources of land use conflict, and they are exactly what the RU1 zoning seeks to avoid. It is not good practice to only rely on checking notes and signage to manage those risks. If approved, this use becomes lawful and the burden of conflict will fall not on the operator but on the neighbouring agricultural producers who are simply going about their business. This chamber has already refused previous applications for development for this site, the latest one being in October 2022. Nothing material has changed since. If anything, the rationale for refusal is stronger today, because we now acknowledge the pressing and urgent need for a Murray Bateman master plan, which thankfully has been funded in the 2025-26 operational budget. That master plan will give us a framework for tourism and rural development, but until that is in place, it is irresponsible to support incompatible uses of rural land. Approving this application will signal that Council is willing to sidestep its own planning objectives and set a practical precedent that will invite further speculative development in our productive rural zones. I stand with our cool climate wine industry, our farmers and our community's vision. I encourage my fellow councillors to join me in refusing this development application on strong planning grounds, including non-compliance with the RU1 zone objectives and the inadequate value proposition for the Murray Bay community. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, councillor Cherry. Councillor Carter.
I rise to speak for the motion as well, Madam Mayor. The short answer for me in this particular case comes back to a point I think raised by Councillor Cherry here, which is that, again, we've been asked to make decisions about a particular area of interest and importance to our community without really understanding the master plan. What are we actually trying to do here is probably the short answer. And the challenge, of course, and I speak from a legal perspective here, is the moment you start to make exceptions to rules, you potentially open the floodgates here. And the risk is, of course, that that the cart might be before the horse here in terms of the broader impact upon the Murray community, which does require significant development, does require a careful plan for what will become, I think, an ever-growing component of Yass Valley more generally. At the moment, and we've talked about this before in this chamber, this development is ultimately happening to some degree by stealth, and this is another version of those particular questions. We must act at particular times, Madam Mayor, to support what are key industries for our region. We are well known for our viticulture, we're well known for our cool climate wine area, and in that sense we should do all to protect what is an important and significant investment for the continued tourism, continued development and continued national name with respect to Australia more generally. On that basis, this application seems completely at odds with all of those interests that have been developed over time by some pioneers, such as those that are mentioned as bordering this particular land with respect to that wine industry within this particular region more generally. The risk, of course, here is that while there might be suggestions that there won't be pets permitted, etc., it just takes one person to breach that for some other issue to happen. We do know, for example, when it comes to wineries looking to move, for example, to the organic space, that things like spraying and animal infestation and other elements can be significant challenges with respect to that agenda more generally. I think it's risky for us as a council to permit such uses which could have such a significant impact on what is an important part of our community more generally. I urge once again, and I'm pleased, as Councillor Cherry has suggested, that a Murray Master Plan is on our agenda for this particular year. I think we should add to that, of course, an updated LEP, which might be able to, in that sense, reflect some of these particular questions. But ultimately, at this particular point in time, I find it difficult to support this kind of development application, Madam Mayor, for the reasons suggested.
Thank you, councillor Carter. Do I have any speakers against?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'll speak against. I'm speaking against the points that have been put forward in relation to if this was what we needed to present in a court of law as an argument as to why we rejected this DA again. I don't think that this is strong enough. And I don't agree with some of the points. So I'm genuinely perplexed because I feel like if we're looking at the Hunter Valley, for instance, what makes the Hunter Valley beautiful and a tourism destination is because they provide boutique opportunities like this within their agricultural areas. So I disagree that this is going to adversely impact our tourism industry. I think it's the opposite in this regard. And I just would like to be clear that even though the LEP doesn't allow a dwelling, under the LEP it does allow a service department. So this is not going against our LEP. And I just asked the Director of Planning and Environment to clarify that.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, councillor.
So, clause 4.2b of the Yass Local Environmental Plan deals with dwelling entitlements in the RU1 zone and a number of other zones. For the purposes of this particular application, it's not a dwelling as defined in the LEP that you're considering, it's a service department. Clause 4.2b does not apply to the development. They are two very distinct and separately defined uses.
Thank you. I also I don't agree that this specific DA has attracted substantial community opposition. We have not, to my knowledge, ever entered into a planning forum for this DA all 3 times because we haven't had the quota amount of submissions that negated having to have a planning forum. So I think the word substantial community opposition, I just don't agree with that. I think that the applicant has shown to work with council. I think that the terms of conditions are great. I think that the aesthetics of the design is beautiful, and I really don't see what a negative impact this could be on the Murrumbidgee community.
Do I have any further speakers for? Do I have any further speakers against? Councillor Burgess.
I still can't understand how we can get houses built on 1.5 hectares when there was 70 acres out the road here where the Emu farm was, and council knocked it straight back, and the planning body in Sydney knocked it back. That's 70 acres, this is 1.5 or 5 acres in other words. I just can't understand it, so I'm voting against with the motion.
Sorry, councillor,
That's
yeah.
all the motion,
Yep.
Madam?
Okay, so just for clarity, councillor Burgess is supporting councillor Cherry's motion. Okay. Councillor Flannery.
I'm also supporting councillor Chari's motion. I just want to refer to some of the rationale that has been put forward around there's an opportunity for making guests aware and it's not a major impact. On a personal level, I live close to the boat ramp in Yass and I opposed it being open to the public for a range of, not open to the public all the time, open to the public all the time, 24 hours a day. I wanted it to have regulated times, and I was told that the conditions could be met, a little sign would be put up and all of these other things, but I constantly am subjected to really offensive behaviour down there that the council now has told me to go and ring the police. So if we're following that same argument through, by putting up little signs and saying, you know, you need to keep your pets inside, don't worry, they might spray every now and again, I feel that we're putting too much onus on existing businesses. And I feel, what is the impact on those businesses if people don't comply, or if then it turns into something else? So that's the reasons that I don't support it.
Thank you, councillor Flannery. I do have 2 questions for the Director of Planning, if I could. With the site distances, the distances between the 2 properties in terms of agricultural use, that was all taken into account during the assessment. Okay.
Through you, Madam Mayor, that's addressed in the report.
Yeah.
Just reminding councillors again that you're not considering a dwelling as a service department, so they're not occupied all the time. And there is reference to service departments in relation to the agricultural uses.
So can I stand up? I can stand up, that's not what I was asking. I know you're saying they're not occupied all the time, but could they be? Like, could they be booked out all the time?
Yep. But they're not dwellings. I need to make that really clear to council, because you're referring back to dwellings and dwelling entitlements. They are 2 completely unrelated issues.
And the issue of a master plan was raised. I'm struggling to see the context of why this would be a concern. If I could just ask the Director, would an updated master plan impact on how this would be assessed in any way?
Through you, Madam Mayor, no, I don't think so, because the LEP actually is the environmental planning instrument that applies in this case. And there's a range of uses beyond agriculture that are permitted with consent in that zone.
Councillors, if I could just make a few comments. I grew up in the Hunter Valley. As a 20-something, there were multiple opportunities for economic development and employment in the vineyards, and I'm very appreciative for that. I spent some time as a wedding photographer at many boutique locations on people's special day, and that was only possible because of boutique accommodation in the vineyards, where it was possible to go and then actually have these people stay for multiple days in the area, increasing the economic activity for the vineyards and for those vineyards that also had the capacity to hold events at. And so I've seen the wonderful side of having boutique accommodation available. I note the nuance that in some of the submissions about these accommodation being part of an agricultural operation that could have greater control over the number of or what weeks they would actually book it out for in juxtaposition of their agricultural activities. But I think there is a place for this kind of development in Murray Bateman going forward, and it's about balance. It's about balance. Right, councillors, I'll open it to Councillor Cherry now to close his debate.
No further
Oh,
comments.
no further comments. All right, let's put it to vote. All those in favour of Councillor Cherry's motion? That's Councillor McGrath, Carter, Cherry, Burgess and Flannery. All those against? Councillors Butler and Jones. And the motion is carried. Congratulations, Councillor Cherry. Moving on to item 6.4. Development application DA 230382 for the 51 lot residential subdivision on 172B Rosyth Street, Yass. There is a recommendation before us, councillors, with 3 components to it. Do I have a mover?
All those are in.
So moved. Councillor McGrath. Do I have a seconder? Seconded, Councillor Butler. Councillor McGrath, you have the floor if you wish it. Councillor Butler. Any speakers for the motion?
Can I ask a question, just clarification?
Councillor Carter.
I forgot to write down the gentleman's name, unfortunately, so I know down Mr. Cassidy, but the other gentleman.
That's
Mr. Richards?
Mr. Richards.
Thank you. Mr. Richards talked about issues around being able to sort of trench around the trees and the like, and talked about a submission around that. Is that actually, have we seen any copy around what that might look like? Because I couldn't see it within the documentation.
Because all of the submissions are attached to the council report.
Right, is that,
But I think that, but I believe there's been separate meetings as well
right.
with the applicant and the
Can we count that as being accepted or taken, or
in.
as part of the plan for the development, that those trees will be protected as much as possible? I'm just trying to,
So
it doesn't make anything here about those trees.
Talking about the pines.
Yes, the pines and also the trenching near the fence and that
Yep.
kind of stuff.
So, through you, Madam Mayor, so the pines, I understand, are staying. They're on the neighbour's property
Yes.
and they can be protected. It's actually addressed in the report. The 6 eucalyptus trees, it's proposed that they be removed, they be planted. And there has been an assessment made of those trees. My concern is that those trees potentially will be damaged during the servicing of the subdivision. And as such, if you don't deal with the issue now, you probably will have to deal with it for individual landowners and the lots come onto the market.
Okay.
I think there is a comment in the report regarding that the applicant had proposed to plant trees. So on page 52 of the report, it says that the applicant and developer have offered to plant new trees for mature plot size on the adjoining property owner's lot.
Can I just have a follow-up question? It might be to the Director of Planning or it might be to the Chief Financial Officer. So this talks about extending the voluntary planning agreement for a further year. We've already committed, is that correct, to the expenditure of sort of $42,000 or similar. Is that right?
Through you, Madam Mayor, so 42,000 is the rates that we would collect once the lots are created as a group. And then we've listed out the costs per year of maintenance. After the voluntary planning period has ended, it comes under our control. My understanding from discussions with the planners is that the idea of the lot that's coming into council's ownership is that it has minimal maintenance requirements because of the biodiversity values of the land.
Right.
And as such, I have asked that signs go on the site saying essentially, like, this is how it is, we don't maintain this.
Okay, so this is an additional kind of one-off cost that comes from this extension for a year, is that?
Yeah, so, no, sorry,
No,
so
sorry.
every year after the voluntary planning agreement ends, it comes into our management, it'll cost, at the current rate, $13,500 a year to maintain.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
That's really
Versus the rate which was around the 40.
Forty.
Yeah, okay.
I wasn't, sorry, I might have got it wrong.
Just following up on Councillor Carter's questions, if I could ask, we had a request from from the Open Forum gentleman, Mr. Richards, that he would be prepared to enter into a cost agreement should the trees, if they were trenched, then die. Is that something that is negotiated outside of council and these conditions, or is this something that needs to be brought in now? And how do we do that as not the third party?
My recommendation to council would be to allow the trees to be removed as part of if it improves the development, that includes the removal of the trees. If the developer and the neighbour want to come to a separate agreement, they can. But noting that really, look, we see these issues all the time. The developer is already committing 3 hectares of land, significant biodiversity value. What I think will happen is that as time goes on, either they will be impacted by the trenching for the servicing of the subdivision, or the people who buy the land are going to want to remove the trees. It's preferable that it be dealt with in a holistic sense now, rather than piecemeal down the track. So that's my recommendation back to council, but if the developer and the neighbour want to come to a separate agreement, they can, the trees can remain there if that is the agreement, but just noting concerns down the track.
Thank you, but that's not a condition that we could, should, or
No.
would place here. Thank you. Councillor Flannery.
I have a number of questions around this development. Firstly, the one that I often go to is around the supply of water. So I notice in item 6.4, it says in the paper, this subdivision is within the area identified for potential residential development under the LEP, and there remains adequate water supply available. And at a previous council meetings, I still don't have a really good handle around what adequate is, and I would hope that we could get some more specific information around that to say that it is in that area that is, part of the LEP and proposed development, but how many allocations we have left and how many. So adequate, I don't feel gives me much confidence, or it isn't actually specific enough as to what we're doing with our water. The second point that I am just going to, and might go a little bit back and forward in my conversation here, is I understand that this development contains an area of significant biodiversity value, and yet when we look at the financial implications, we're going to mow it, we're going to spray it. And if that doesn't kind of align to having good biodiversity values, that management is quite different than mowing and spraying. And so I just wonder whether we've actually looked at the financial implications with an eye to preserving some biodiversity and how we go about that. Because what I think you've used is a traditional approach to maybe just a grassland, and not really emphasising the importance of biodiversity values, and also asking the developer what they would do if they had to manage it. Like, are they just going to mow it, which might really deplete the biodiversity? The other point around open space is, I know there's a reference to the Hatton Park playground, and I'm sorry if I haven't looked at the detail of the layout, if it's available, it may well be, but I'd just be interested in the walkable distance between all the houses to the Hatton Street playground and the implications of how many other families use that. within Canberra, which is an area that I previously worked in, there is a policy around 400 metre walking distance from houses to playgrounds so that we get a walkable community rather than some community that where people have to drive. And my last point around playgrounds is in an area that's ecologically sensitive has box drum woodland, are we really considering putting a playground in there? Because that to me would seem to reduce the biodiversity and it also isn't accounted for in the financial costings. So there's 4 points: water, how we actually have come up with the metric for the financial management, the walkability of the Hatton Park playground, and if we're seriously considering putting a playground into an environmentally sensitive area.
I might answer the question about the open space first. Through you, Madam Mayor. So the playground that's actually referred to in the report is existing.
Yeah,
It's Yep, so there's no additional new playgrounds, they're slightly embellishing the existing playground.
Sorry, I think you may have misinterpreted my question. I was wondering if we'd done some mapping to see the distance of the Hatton Park playground, which is existing, to the houses, because what distance is the furthest house away? Like if the furthest house away from that playground in a walkable distance is more than 400 metres, those people aren't going to use that, they're going to drive.
Yep.
And so whether we've taken that into consideration.
Through you, Madam Mayor, there is a reference in there around the playground site being adequate, but I can't answer the more detailed question, something I need advance notice of. But there is an existing playground, obviously then there is that open space land that's going to be dedicated to council, that is another form of like passive recreation. In terms of your comments about the costings and traditional method, yes, I would say that is just a traditional method of management. There is actually reference in the report to management actions that need to be undertaken, and the first 5 years is around the developer doing those, and then we would take those on. So I think you have to consider that cost of 13,000 in the context of what the management actions are. My understanding from discussions with the planners is essentially it will be left alone, but there still at times will need to be some maintenance type work undertaken. The spraying of weeds, like we get complaints about weeds all the time, so managing those is important as well. But I think yes, you're correct, it is a traditional method of maintenance.
Okay, so we probably have some metrics on some of our existing open space lands, such as the Yass Gorge, which is not really very well maintained, it's mainly done by volunteers. So I just would like, I hope, and I don't know if we have an environmental officer that in council at the moment, that we review the financial implications and look at those to get a realistic understanding for the management of that area. So there are weeds that will need to be managed and possibly sprayed, but there might also be tracks that need to be, whip snipped or something like that, like some kind of sensitive regime that is a bit more akin to biodiversity than, because we might actually erode everything that we've tried to preserve if we don't.
Thank you, I'll take those.
Thank you, Councillor Flannery. Do we have any further? Sorry, water?
Yep, through you, Madam Mayor. So this subdivision is included in the water service area for Yass distribution network. It has been included in the settlement strategy and there is an allocation for this development. We do have a planned workshop with councillors coming in either in August or September to discuss water and everything to do with water.
So with respect, I definitely understand that it is in the LEP and it is all of that, but my question was specifically, do we actually know how many we have allocated out and how many we have to allocate, and in a similar way to the solar farms, what's the pipeline? And so that's what I'm interested in. So I guess the answer, the way you've answered that is we'll probably find out in August.
Through Madam Mayor, so we have approximately 1,000 ETs remaining in our current network now. So this will take away 51 of the 1,000 that's available, but we'll go into further detail at the workshop and I'll give you a bit more clarity there.
Through
Councillor
you,
Butler.
I just had a follow-up question from something that Councillor Flannery raised, which was a really good question. The maintenance period. So if I trust that our council and our council staff would do due diligence to maintaining areas of high biodiversity correctly in terms of spraying and everything. But if the developer is to maintain that area for that 5-year period, do they have to follow a strict protocol that we set out, and are we doing any compliance on that? I just would hate to see that they would just come in for 4 or 5 years and just spray and just mow and do everything to get rid of anything that's going to cost them more money. So yeah, thank you.
Through you, Madam Mayor, my understanding is there is a management actions that go with the ecological work that has been completed, and so the developer will have to follow those management actions. Once the 5 years ends and the management of the land comes to council, then the Parks and Gardens team would then be briefed on the types of things that they can and can't do on that land. And if I can give you an example, the Murray Bateman Cemetery, which doesn't get mowed for a certain period every year, is related to management of biodiversity for, I think it's for the golden sunblock or something like that. So we do have management actions in place in other parts, and we do follow those.
Thank you.
Sorry, I know I'm labouring the point. We do have a Yass gorge management plan, which is due for renewal in 2 years, so that could be a reasonable template to come up with some management actions. But I just refer you to page 50, so it's annoying glasses and no glasses, 50, where it says the area is too small for a biodiversity stewardship agreement, and that if a biodiversity stewardship agreement was applicable, there's very specific management action. So I'm just thinking that this is probably too small for that, but we should look at trying to I know you mentioned the Parks and Gardens teams, but they are Parks and Gardens, they're not environmental people, so I would just urge the council to look at some existing plans and try to put some conditions around that.
Thank you. Councillors, any further questions, speakers? Let's put this to the vote. All those in favour? That's Councillor Butler, McGrath, Carter, Cherry, Jones, Burgess and Flannery. Councillors, that's unanimous. Councillors, I will now step out due to my conflict for item 6.5, the local roads and community infrastructure funding. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, councillors. We have item 6.5 before us to deliberate on. The recommendation is that the $116,000 funding under phase 4 of the local roads and community infrastructure program be allocated as follows: $25,000 for the Vinelawn Recreation Ground accessibility ramp and parking space at the amenities building, and $91,000 for the Bookham playground. Do we have a motion? Councillor Sharry?
Madam Deputy Chair, could we move to committee the whole, noting that a lot of the councillors weren't at our meeting on Thursday, so we can have a bit of an informal chat before we move any motion?
Yes. Is that okay? Okay. Do we need to move on something for that?
Okay, so
Thank you. Councillor Cherry, if you would like to open debate in committee of the whole?
yeah, look, I'll just throw it out to anyone. I guess there's a lot of options that are on the table here. And I know the email trial you had with the Director of Planning today, obviously all to be considered. I personally am of the opinion that the points that the Director of Planning raised today are quite pertinent, noting that if it wasn't for the, I guess, the notice that CI put into it, that money would have ostensibly would have been expected to be used for the playground. I guess the proposition is, should we consider it in light of the advice received from the Director? I think that's a viable option. I think Wednesday is a discussion that needs to be had with the grant provider. So I think that's probably something that will allow us to potentially look at a deferral before we make a decision. just as a consideration point.
Thank you, councillor Cherry. Does anyone else wish to speak?
When does this have to be expensed by? Is there a termination date on this?
I'll move to the Director of Environment Planning to comment.
Through you, Deputy Mayor, it's May 26.
May
Unless-
2026.
Yeah, not the 26th.
No.
You missed it.
May 2026.
So we've got 11 months. The concern is around,
And that's expenditure or is that committed?
no, that's likely expenditure completion of the project.
And that's for the amenities building, it's a discussion going,
So do you want me to go through what's
for
that
in
be
light,
of
because I think
assistance?
everyone.
I think it would be of
Yeah.
assistance.
Yeah. So council will recall the LRCI money cannot be used in conjunction with the LIOC money, sorry, to use the acronyms. So the 750,000 has to stand alone without the 116,000 from the other so that's also a federal grant. And council is meeting with the LIOC grant provider on Wednesday because we've already submitted the grant application, like the amendment for the grant applications we were asked to do at the May meeting. So we're going to discuss that and then we have the option, then we can talk to them about the car park and the amenities block. The issue is that the amenities block is picked up in the LIOC funding as a project and as such can't be used, can't use that 116,000 from the LRCI program. What we're going to ask is can we remove the amenities block from the LIOC funding and put that towards the amenities building and use that 116,000. We think that we could construct the amenities block within the May 26 timeframe. We can't with the car park because that's essentially going to be our site drop-off area. All the site offices, everything are going to be on that car park. That 750,000 doesn't have to be expended until December, so we expect we'll take a good part of next year, and then we were going to rehabilitate the car park once we finish the playground. Does that make sense?
So are these projects ready,
Which ones?
these two?
So those two projects, the ramp and the accessibility parking space are relatively simple projects, they're not particularly difficult, we just need to do up some designs and we can do them reasonably quickly. The Bookham Playground, so we've been working with the Bookham Community Association for I'd say 12 months around their playground, the placement of the Kevin Fagan's sculpture within the playground. And so it would not be difficult to get to a point where we had a design and we can move forward with that playground.
Are there any other Murray Bateman infrastructure projects that are effectively kind of ready? And I do know we had quite a significant visit from a young student at Murray Bateman School saying, I can't walk safely home. And I know that that's not going to buy a lot of a footpath, but are there other things we could be using? Because I know we've suggested in a previous council meeting that we would try to use this in Murray Bateman. And I note the comments about other communities deserving infrastructure projects as well. But I do want our kids to get home safe.
Yes, yeah. Through you, Deputy Mayor, I think, so we have tried to think of other projects in Murray Bateman. One of the issues, and with the greatest respect to that community, is that any consultation we do can be quite drawn out, and we have to expend the money by May 2026. So that's part of the issue. The projects that we've put forward we think are the most appropriate. Noting, say, the cricket net relocation, it's all but ready to go, but it's not enough. 116,000 is not enough money. The Murray Bateman Community Hall upgrades is something that they have been asking for, at least in my time at council. I'm not sure we've ever put any money towards it since I've been here. So that would be suitable as well. But we have given considerable thought to what else at Murray Bateman could be done. 116,000 is not going to get much footpath work. Yeah.
It's better than nothing.
Yeah.
It's a start.
But I'm open to suggestions, but needs to be something that we're kind of currently worked on or we're working on, because the other thing is that team is now, like, between the playground, they're doing some work with the school library, this is the library replacement, roof replacement, like they've got significant projects on the run as well and commitments in the op plan for next year.
Can we just signal that I think we should be looking at how we can provide a safe space for our kids to get home from the school? I think it's really important, so if we can put that somehow on the work plan. I know that's something we can't really,
Just broadly.
yeah.
Yeah.
It would be great to get that into all of it.
So if you'd like a bit of direct, just to help you, so the guidelines for the LRCI funding and the examples of eligible works are CCTV, bicycle walking paths, painting or improvements to community facilities, repairing and replacing fencing, improved accessibility of community facilities and areas, landscaping, picnic shelters, barbecue facilities and community parks, public art, playgrounds and skate parks, noise and vibration mitigation measures, off-road car parks such as what we're proposing, and projects that support the transition to net zero for council-owned assets.
So would an amenities building actually fall under one of those categories?
Yeah, it would
Okay.
fall in the category, it's just that the LIOC funding provider needs to agree to the change in the scope of the works of that funding agreement.
Going back to the creating safer pathway connections, I do know that yes, there is a real lack of that in Murrumbidgee. However, I think, you know, the petition that we got, actually, she did draw a circle around the whole of Murrumbidgee. So, I mean, that's, and I would pass over to the Director of Infrastructure and Assets. I mean, if you could give us a rough idea of maybe how much, you know, 300 metres worth of pathway would cost, it would just, yeah, it would be difficult to start a project like that, because then I suppose we'd be committing council to money to complete it, or we'd just end up with a pathway to nowhere.
Yeah, so through you, Madam Mayor, $116,000 would go, you get a bit of footpath works done, and improvement works. But also there is a whole heap of other active transport grants that do become available that are specific for footpaths. Whereas this one is open to a whole range of things.
Okay.
Future grants that will become available will be specifically for footpath infrastructure.
So we just unfortunately lost out on the, I think it was 5 applications that we put forward. We had the shovel-ready plans. I think Murrumbidgee had 2 or 3 in there. So we do know what areas would be shovel-ready, and that probably would come in that circle of the map that was drawn on. So potentially, I mean, if we're coming back, if we do decide to defer this, would you be able to maybe look at 1 or 2 of those and then add that into a table for deliberation at the meeting? And I just wanted to make a note of the Jones Park Murrumbidgee upgrade. I do disagree that this is a high risk project risk, only because this has already been decided when the 2021 consultations was taken place with all user groups that dictated what was going to happen within that Murrumbidgee recreation grounds area, which included the upgrade to Jones Park Murrumbidgee. So essentially from 2021 to now, this should still be a shovel-ready project. And in saying that, I know that council has already gone for a grant in the past for this project. So it is indeed a shovel-ready project, and it has already done its community consultation. So I would like to see that high risk removed, because I don't think that would create a huge amount of conflict within the user groups, because the consultation, as far as I'm concerned, has already been done for that. I do want to also highlight that I do agree that, you know, Vinalong, Bowning, other areas, they absolutely deserve infrastructure as well. But I think we're all going to end up fighting for our life in this, you know, economic environment that we are at. And I just think that we need to do all due diligence to delivering all of the money that was supposed to be for this playground for Murrumbidgee that has almost 4,000 residents in this town, and we don't really have one playground and we have very, very low infrastructure facilities, recreational infrastructure facilities that people can just go and use. So I'm not dismissing that Weinholm and Bounding deserve things as well, but this has been over 5 years in the making, this playground, and I just would hate to see, if we can keep the money that was allocated to it, it would be fantastic. Yeah. Does anyone else have any other comments while we're in committee of the whole?
Pretty powerful argument you've just presented.
Thank you, councillor.
Well, I'd say Bountyman out there got their own footpaths. Didn't they?
I certainly do.
They put their money in,
Through the $1 billion grant, it was.
Yeah, grants, yeah.
For, yeah.
that's what you gotta do. So I think old people gotta do it.
I am not agnostic, I just have mixed views on it because I feel that as a council we're lacking a kind of prioritisation of how we prioritise which activities are funded, this or that, because it kind of, we just seem to putting the butter around pretty thin, which I know happens. But didn't we have a developer at one of the other meetings say that they didn't need a playground in Murray Boatman because everyone's got big, large lots? I remember them saying that, like that they're, one of the developments saying that most people have large lots, so they created their own playgrounds. Because remember there was that development that might have been last meeting or the weekend meeting before that said, we don't need another playground in Murray Bateman because, people make their own. I don't know, that was just, so I don't know if it should go to a playground or what it should go to.
I've heard that comment before too, but I don't think it's a valid one.
Well, I'm just saying that was something that draws to my mind, and so therefore if we've got communities that, are kind of shovel ready, and the activity's ready to go, perhaps prioritise the funding there, but it just opens up a bigger issue of how we prioritise the funding.
Well, that's the decision that we have to make as councillors, unfortunately.
This council, not this council, but we don't seem to have a metric or a method that has a rating system. It's kind of like People's Pets Project or preferred ones or more education or something.
Yeah, well, I have to say, just in my short time in council, I have never seen reports actually get delivered like this. Maybe Councillor Grant Burgess could, attest to that, but I actually found it really helpful to read out all of the specifics and then have sort of, like a table that I've never seen that.
I thought that was all
like
good.
a new thing that council has brought about, and it definitely made it easier to pick it apart.
Well, I think the setting out of information. Yeah, I think the setting out of information is essential. I feel that we can also go one step further of how we would make a metric around how we might be able to do it in the future, but that's just a bigger comment.
Yeah, can you just jump in, because obviously I completely agree with the prioritisation, because obviously each one of us will see each one of these projects through a different lens. And clearly, I fundamentally agree with Councillor Butler's comment about, this was originally committed to the Murray Bay community, and we technically got it on a $1.1 million playground. We've been saying that all along. And if we can find a way to do that, I think that's very achievable to happen. I'm very happy to support that. So I guess I'd really love to hear your thoughts on it, and the prioritisation piece when it comes to infrastructure projects would be very helpful, and clearly, you're at the helm, so lead us.
Through you, Deputy Mayor. I'd just like to say that, in councils like ours, where there's such diverse communities, it's very hard to do a prioritisation because of that exact thing. Everyone sees it through their own lens, and I've worked in councils where you'll have coastal communities versus inland communities, and their character and identity and needs and wants can be very different, but every part is still very passionate. So it is a difficult thing. There's no magic formula. There's no. If I come up with a prioritisation method, you would argue with me, no doubt, because you see it different, you experience it different, and that's the beauty of councils. We have very diverse communities. From that though, the reasons why the staff put forward those two projects is because after doing the IPNR roadshow, it was very clear that there were some areas of the community that felt unloved when it comes to community assets. And when you put that through the lens of having to deliver a project within a very tight timeframe now, and for me, that first one, which is this accessibility, accessibility rail and parking, to me screams incomplete project. And I have seen in other councils where we've had what we call a Liberty Swing, with no disability access to it. And that is really poor, no matter how you look at it. So it's a way that council could right or wrong, if you like, and finalise that project. And also with the Book and Playground, again, it came out through the IPNR roadshow. So I think that, you know, one of the good shining examples is that through the executive having engaged with the community, it shows that we've listened to the community and that we've actually brought that back to the councillors for consideration. That being said, I do note that it is a $1.1 million project, as you said, Councillor Cherry, and the Murrumbidgee community may feel hard done by reallocating the funds somewhere else. So these are things that you as councillors need to weigh up. I think it is a really good step forward that the staff have put these options forward. What I would like to suggest is, while I don't have a magic or silver bullet for the answer, is that if you're going to go down the line of waiting for an outcome for discussions with the funding body, that you provide a resolution that looks at a priority of, if one doesn't get up, we can go to the next, because I am concerned about the timeframe that we have to deliver. And the one thing that we really don't want is to lose 116,000 from our community as a whole.
Valid. Can I just make a comment? Thanks, Gavin. Sorry, if I may, Madam Deputy Chair. The comment that Miss Annalise Caston made. Annalise Caston's Murrumbidgee Community Association long time server, and for her to come to us and present her support for the recommendation does carry a bit of weight, so that we need to consider that as well. We're not going to please everybody, so that's what do we think?
I would like to be in a councillor's shoes right yeah, don't forget in there that we need a procedural motion to move out of discussion and back into formal.
Could we potentially add an amendment to this though? So could we add something along the lines of that, sorry, this is ad-libbing, that council should investigate all opportunities to provide, not council, it's council. Council should investigate all opportunity to provide or seek further funding for like safer community projects within Murrumbidgee, including footpaths. The amenities building we can pay for, is that the short answer?
That's currently covered in the LIOC money.
So we can do that?
Yes.
Right, okay, so I think
It reduces the amount that we can spend on equipment, which really, you know, that's frustrating. So
we could put that in there, Murrumbidgee community, including footpaths and amenities buildings or something similar.
Is it, and sorry, can I just ask, Councillor, just so I'm clear, so you want us to look at that for the 116?
No, this is for
Just
like
broadly,
moving forward.
broadly,
Like, so you're talking about grants coming up,
Yep.
for example.
Yep.
Yeah, footpath grants.
So more broadly, council more.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll actively you know,
Yeah.
seek, so it's seek funding, I think, seek opportunities to provide funding for.
Just so councillors know, the summary, like those projects are all strategically identified. I just have to check the pump track, I can't remember if it's in the open space strategy or not, but they are all related back to a strategic plan of some description.
and are they listed as high, medium, low? That's what I was going to ask. So the two that have been put forward, in the master plan as it stands, are they currently sitting as high or medium or low? And I'm sorry that I didn't look.
Yeah, no, I'd have to go and have a look myself.
Because
They
I know
are
there are
ranked.
a few that are high
Yep.
in their master plans, and they
Yes.
have been like that for many years.
Yep.
But there might also be, I guess there's we're discussing that, you know, the metric is high because the two items identified might be medium, but it's the funding amount. So they're a perfect fit, although they mightn't be the highest. I'm not saying, I don't know the answer, but that might be one of the reasons.
I was only saying that because if for whatever reason these two don't get up and they are currently listed as low or medium, perhaps there will be opportunity to move them up to high, given the community feedback that this is something that they desperately want right now.
Yeah.
So that will come later, perhaps.
So the only one here is the Jones Park, is that right? We could pay for that as is that the idea?
We could do Jones Park, you just meaning Murray Bateman?
Yeah.
So we do the Jones Park and the community hall. Just noting the Deputy Mayor's comments around the consultation, I think the consultation we're looking at is more around the equipment that would go in there, but in saying that, this is not a massive playground, like it's
No.
quite small. So, council could always make a decision to just set aside that part of the project in the interests of getting it delivered. That's something you need to weigh up as council, because that high risk, that is, it's around doing the consultation around the equipment and then being able to move on from that, because it has to come back and forth to council.
Yeah. Well, I do believe that the previous grant that council went for, which maybe was in 2022, something along there, that was an $80,000 grant from memory. It was a 40-40 match grant, so we had set aside $40,000 in our budget for that. I don't know what type of consultation had gone on in terms of like what equipment and everything, but as far as I knew, if we had that grant, then that was just going to be done. So I don't think that 80,000 is too far outside the scope of 91,000. So perhaps it could be that we allocate 91,000 for an upgrade of the play equipment, and then we can still keep the 25,000 for the blind one, something like that.
So we could have a look at that and just see. My gut feeling is you would probably need the whole 116,000 to do Jones Park, but we'll do some costings and work that out for you.
Okay.
So can we do something like allocate this as follows, with first priority to these projects, if they're unsuccessful, then investigate Jones Park or something, would that be the right, or the Murray Bateman Community Hall, is that the right way to do it? Because you said give us all options.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Deputy Mayor, but I think you were suggesting that instead of the Bookham Playground, it would be the Jones Park, so 25 for the All Abilities ramp and parking space, and then 91,000 towards Jones Park, is that correct?
That would be my preferred, only because I know that Jones Park has been a long-standing project. It's shovel ready, it's already tied to the grant as it stands. It says that is what the grant is for. And so I would like to see that go ahead.
If we can't allocate it to the Murray Bateman playground, the larger playground.
If it cannot be allocated to that, yes.
Yep.
And
So I'm talking.
the only reason I'd be happy to keep it at the 91,000 is that the previous grant was 80,000, and yes, it was a few years ago, so it increases in fees and all that kind of stuff, but I'm sure we could get a good zhuzh up for $91,000 there for, it's just 2 swings. And at the moment, because it is a rest stop, it is actually heavily used all the time. There are always kids on those swings.
I agree.
So it's a well worthwhile, playground. It's not just for the Murray Bateman community. It is actually a rest area that our people utilise. Sorry, Councillor Tony.
There's a Bookham playground too.
I know. Look, I mean, it is just one of those things. But in all my time of council, I've never heard about the Bookham playground. No one's come and spoken about the Bookham playground, the desperate need for a Bookham playground. And just to be fair, otherwise I would advocate for that. But maybe I've just been listening to myself talk about the Murray Bateman playground for too long now. It's just in my head. But I'm not dismissing Bookham, I'm not dismissing anyone, and like I said, we're all fighting for our life here when it comes to money, so, but if we want to prioritise Bookham, then, we can.
Can I ask a general question about playgrounds? I think, Councillor Buckley, you mentioned about something about equipment, less money on equipment. Do we, investigate nature play and other things that aren't, they hate to use the term McDonald's style parks because in many places they're not advocating plastics or anything like that. And so I feel that it's time that Yass pulls up its socks and, stops just making playgrounds that everyone has, and that we look at nature play and other things that are more than a few pebbles on the ground.
And from all of the information that I've had around it and seeing the plans, that has been a driving force for the Murrumbidgee Playground project, is that it really would be focused around nature play, lots of natural materials, all of that kind of stuff. So I think that it would be a real main focus for that. It's definitely not a McDonald's style, Coronation Park style playground, from my understanding of seeing the designs. No. Does anyone else have any further comments in terms of the recommendation that we've now shaped? I'm trying to type something up.
It just seems to be a reasonable compromise to me, bearing in mind that the money was allocated for Murrumbidgee, and they've waited buying on for a hell of a long time.
And accessibility around.
There's no good fight. And you know when you go to Bullrooms, final on the mountain, they just said, all that stuff's on there. So, I guess that everybody
Have a point before that says that we will defer.
the man, so check on the man.
That we will defer the decision pending the outcome of the meeting with the grant provider. Does that have to be a dot point before?
Yes, it would have to be, if that's,
Okay.
if you want that to go as a preference.
So that's a precondition to this.
Yes,
If that is not the case, then we investigate this.
yes, so that needs to be a
I must
dot
have missed something, but why are we now saying that we're gonna put the 91,000 for the Jones Park playground? I just missed some point, because we must be on the side, we didn't follow the bouncing ball quite correctly then. Because I thought that we were going to have a whole big playground and a whole lot of other things, and this to me just seems very wasteful.
So no, what we're doing is we're trying to formulate a default motion, because what we would like to do is have the recreation teams speak to the grant provider, which they're having a meeting on Wednesday. They're going to ask if they can delete the amenities building from the $750,000 grant, and that would then, in order, be able to utilise the $116,000 to provide the amenities building, giving back the $750,000 to the playground project. If the grant provider on Wednesday says that that is acceptable and that we can do that, then council staff will activate that plan and we'll move forward with that, and then this will all be deleted, so we won't. But if the grant provider comes back and says, no, you can't do that, and we're still in the same position that we can't use that $116,000 for the Murrumbidgee Playground project, then council will put forward this recommendation at the July meeting for us to deliberate on.
Contingency.
Okay.
We are missing a dot point. We're missing a dot point here.
I'm still feeling a bit sad about Bookham not getting something, and because they're ready to go, and they've just paid for all their own footpaths. And I kind of feel that they've done a lot of heavy lifting. And
The bounding circuit.
sorry, bounding, yeah.
Yeah.
This is.
You're confusing it.
Okay, right, okay.
So, and I would just like to say that if we are considering this as a motion at the July meeting, that the 116 then gets put towards the $25,000 for the book at Barnwell Recreation and 91,000, that would be the time that we could debate that again and amend that if we needed to. But I suppose we're just trying to create a fallback
Wouldn't you just simply go
motion now.
Yeah, I
first
think this
preference
is
and
clumsy.
then defer?
Yeah, I think that this is what it's clumsy.
Because there's no point naming it, we're going to debate it again, so you
Yeah.
just go first preference and then defer.
And then,
If you
yeah.
want it to come back to a July meeting,
Yeah,
then there's no
because
point doing a preference.
this wouldn't go
But-
to July meeting, would it?
My comment around it was, the clock is ticking.
Yeah, I agree.
So if you could do preferences, that saves us from coming back in July, that you have faith in council staff to be able to act through or work through those preferences. And obviously we can update council to that as to how or why that's come about.
If we put it, if we've got a couple of councillors that aren't happy with the recommendation that we've shaped now in the committee of the whole, do we put it to an informal vote now? Yeah, sorry, no, okay.
Well, in respect, we can test the interest of the meeting, but really the debate about framing the motion should be happening in full meeting of council, because the point of the committee of the whole is just to have an informal discussion to understand the issues. Notwithstanding, I can see there's the potential recommendations coming out of that. A cleverly crafted recommendation or a motion could include a reflection of preferences to be further reported on by council officers as part of any deferral action.
I'm happy with that recommendation as it reads.
Okay, bearing in mind that there is a motion on the floor,
And
and that
also,
motion cannot be withdrawn, that once it becomes the property of the meeting. Of course, councillors can vote that motion down and then move to another motion.
I mean, I have to admit that, I mean, I sympathise with the Jones Park conversation. But also, I sympathise with the Bookham position as well. And so I'm just worried about that impression. And also, there was something else we suggested here about seeking further infrastructure support as well.
Yeah, which is a final point.
But that's kind of disappeared off there because it's.
There it is.
But it's a different, that motion's being superseded.
Just defer it.
Yeah, I think that if we're uncertain, I think then the only option that we have is just to defer, and that is all we do tonight. And then we come back as a council with the further information.
Strongly advocating for
Which I think,
community input
which I think,
I just,
to us.
yeah, I mean, I reflect on Councillor Chari's point that I'm really getting a bit, like can't remember proper names, like people's names, the lady from Murray Bateman.
Ms. Caston, Alex.
Yes, that where she was saying, and she's from the community there, saying she feels that other community projects are worthy. That was just my.
She was speaking for herself, though, she made that very clear.
Yeah, that's right.
She was, and we also did receive another community member put forward a submission to say that they felt that it should belong at Jones Park. So we also did receive that as a formal submission.
I think we should defer, get a final decision from the.
Yeah.
Yeah, otherwise,
Otherwise, we're just going to erase it.
Everybody's on.
Yep, so defer, it should be the support motion.
Okay, so then we need to delete the second dot point, but we'll keep the third.
I think we defer.
But would you like council, because the third one is council should seek all opportunities to provide funding. So do you want, if we're deferring, do you want that information to come forward in the July meeting? In terms of the pathways?
Yeah, I think we have to come back to that conversation, because the deferral is that we're not making a decision. We're waiting to see what the grant provider suggests, and then we come back in July and say,
Yeah, I think that's.
yes, it goes to the,
Yeah.
it goes to the playground amenities block, or it goes somewhere else.
And then we can have this discussion all over again.
Okay,
but unless we know what it
We can't
can
defer in there,
can we not?
I don't think so.
Why?
That's not really deferral, is
Yes,
it?
just
Like then you would put it, if the grant provider allows us,
the
you're
motion
okay.
for deferral, if you can be quite clear what extra information you're actually looking for, if that's the basis of seeking the deferral, then that would be very helpful.
Are we looking for the outcome of the meeting?
Yeah.
Isn't that what it says? That with the outcome of the
And council deserves
LIOC grant
consideration.
discussion
Meeting to allow further investigation of how this funding can be incorporated into Murraybaton Playground
I think it's just to talk to the grant
for the
provider.
10 Hercules
Yes.
Street.
Yeah, no, this was an earlier version.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So it's
so
to-
you just
it's-
fiddle with that.
It's probably to allow council to meet with whoever provides the LRCI funding to confirm how it can be used. I think that's probably what we're asking.
So,
Declines,
deleting. Yep, I'm deleting, yep.
Yep, and I'll work with that one there. Council defer its consideration of 6.5 until the meeting to allow, what did you say, councillor Carter?
To allow for council to meet with the LRCI grant provider to clarify how this funding can be applied.
Do we need to be more specific in terms of deleting the amenities building from the executed LIOC?
Such as can be applied, such as to the.
Because that is
amenities building.
exactly what we're trying to ask them to do, is
Yeah.
to delete that so that it becomes.
Can be applied such as to the amenities building.
How this funding,
There's the amenities building, is the Murrumbeck Playground project.
okay, can I just clarify though, the meeting on Wednesday, are you having the meeting with are you having the local roads and community infrastructure meeting, or is it with the safer
No,
communities
it's
meeting?
with the LIOC
It's the
provider.
roads, it's the roads one.
So that's the first one, the second meeting, then we do need to talk to the LRCI one, but looking at the grant conditions, that looks a little bit broader.
Okay.
So hopefully we can do all those conversations between now and the deadline for the next business
We
paper.
just say provided to clarify whether, it's probably the question of how, whether this funding can be applied to the amenities building and the playground project.
Whether this funding can be applied.
Get rid of such as.
To the amenities building. Yeah, okay. Okay.
What does that remove such as?
So you just don't need such as anymore.
To the amenities in my okay.
Like, could we then say a further thing, which is if acceptable, we, like council can move forward with that, like, can we do that as a.
So that if it's happening behind the scenes and
So
they say.
if LIC says yes, and
Then we don't need to. bring it back to
LICI says
council.
yes, then
Yeah,
just go ahead.
because it continues in the project.
And potentially, we could just bring something back for noting on the outcome, of the outcome of the meeting.
So if funding providers clarify that this funding can be applied to the Murrumbeck project, playground project, from like council, we endorse that or whatever.
Can we have funding providers, because we've got to get agreement from both?
I mean, yeah.
You're doing a really good job, Katie.
Says Councillor Carter.
Someone trained in this.
Then officers can move forward, is that what you're
Then,
saying?
council,
Yeah,
then council endorses that.
Then,
So just to clarify, moving out now.
I think it's council officers,
Decision makers.
I think it's council officers.
Then you go to
can
council
move forward.
chair. And then council as well. Council chair.
Councillor Carter, can you just finish the sentence?
The council officer, oh no, it's up to us, it's council.
Okay, then councillor,
Then
sorry.
council endorses
I'm sorry,
the application,
So you modify.
then council endorses the application of the funding to that project, to the,
Can everyone just, yeah, sorry.
then council endorses the application of the LRCI funding to the complete Murrumbeck playground project, that would be probably the word.
To complete the Murrumbeck playground project. I think the Murrumbeck playground project is tied to Hercules Street. That's what it's always been known as.
Which one is you mean?
Sorry? Oh, we were just, Naomi was saying if we needed to add Hercules Street to that, but I said the Murrumbeck playground project is that at Hercules Street, does not have yes.
And we could put that deleted point in there saying that council should investigate continued infrastructure funding for communities throughout West Valley or something. The council should investigate further infrastructure funding for important community projects across Yass Valley, including the Bookham Playground.
For the villages, isn't it?
Why show preference for a book?
It's a good place. Community footpaths. And what was the bylaw thing?
Bylaw, accessibility.
And the bylaw accessibility ramp.
And car.
And can I just add to that as well, work with community groups to do that as well, because community groups are often really powerful at getting funding for these types of things. So if we're encouraging, them to, I know that we have the grants portal and everything, but perhaps if council comes across something that's suitable for a community group, we could just be on the front foot of saying, hey, this is available, have you looked at this?
We just put that as a separate point.
Or not.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So what do you want to do, add to the second point?
Council should seek to work with community.
Empower community groups. To actively seek grants.
Where appropriate.
At the risk. Can we just change the word should to to? Yeah, so it becomes a definitive action. Council to investigate at the same as the one above.
Okay, is everyone happy with this? Okay.
Here's
So we will do a procedural motion to come out of committee of the whole. So all those in favour to move out of committee of the whole? That is unanimous. So we are now out of the committee of the whole. Councillor Charry, we have an amended motion. Are you happy to accept this as the new motion?
Yes, Madam.
Thank you. So if everyone is finished with their debate, then we can put this motion to the vote. All those in favour of this motion? That is unanimous. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you, Kristen.
Well done. Do we have like a little naughty chair out there? We have a little
Way down
naughty.
here.
Nothing environmental, basically. Jasmine, did you want to get a
Something needed. Yes.
Little did I know that I would have had that window. Councillors, I'll just seek your consent to adjourn for 5 minutes to give you a moment should you need it. Do we have? No? Okay, let's play ball. Okay. Thank you, councillors, let's do this. Planning proposal, item 6.6 for Wallaroo Road, Wallaroo. We have a recommendation before us that the planning proposal be endorsed and be forwarded to the Minister for Planning to request a gateway determination. Do I have a mover? Thank you, councillor Campbell. Seconded, councillor Charry. Very straightforward, councillors. Alright, let's put it to the vote. All those in favour? It's unanimous. Item 6.7, the council sporting facilities user charges review. I know we have an application here to apply just this 2.5% CPI increase in setting our fees further on in this meeting, and that includes the annualised sports fees, the pool lane hire, not-for-profit sports ground booking fees and casual users, and a further report be presented to council prior to the end of the calendar year after additional consultation with sporting groups is undertaken to determine the preferred sporting facility user charges calculation rate. Do I have a mover? That recommendation. So moved councillor McGrath and seconded councillor Flannery. Councillor McGrath, any comments? Councillor Flannery?
I support the motion because I strongly felt that, consultation was needed to look at the full impacts of the potential increase or the change in user charges. I'm still not convinced that our methodology in calculating them is correct, so I'm happy that we have really just taken a very minimalist approach. I'm particularly concerned around cricket because the way the methodology has been prepared disadvantages cricket, which is long duration, short numbers. And so I urge the council to, as part of the process, to think about how low impact, how that sport is affected, because you might have a game such as Yass Touch, which brings a lot of revenue into town at different points. It also might be high impact, whereas cricket is low impact, but long duration. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Flannery. Any further comments?
I have a brief comment here, Madam Mayor, which is just to thank Council for their work with the sporting community components of Yass Valley. I think this is important, and I think it sets a precedent for how we should move forward with these things more generally. It's pleasing that we had such a high response rate, and it shows how important these groups are to what is often the spirit of Yass Valley itself and local communities. So my thanks to Council for the work here.
Councillor Chow.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to echo Councillor Carter's comments. Look, this council cops a lot of flack over community consultation. I think this is an example of how to get it right. Clearly at a point in time where after the extraordinary general meeting, we, council staff primarily, were involved with the whole IPNR roadshow and compiling of reams of paper. I am extremely impressed with the way this was handled, noting that man hours that went into conducting a lot of these meetings with practically every sporting group in the Yass Valley. Clearly their sentiments were echoed in our debate and the motion that we passed, and now the subsequent motion is really encouraging to see the way this was handled. I commend the CEO and your staff the way that was handled, so thank you.
Through you, Madam Mayor, just a few comments. Again, just echoing that this has been a huge amount of consultation that happened in a really short amount of time, and the feedback that I had from some of the clubs was that they were really appreciative of the time that council has spent talking to them, and that this is definitely not a one-size-fits-all, and so it might be quite hard to put it all together. But I just did remember that we used to have a sporting what was it? A committee, a sports council committee. And I'm not sure why that was dissolved or if it, but I do think that something like this highlights probably the need to reactivate something like that, because I think what happens is that most of these clubs operate, 150, 60, 200, 300 members, but they all operate with like 4 volunteers. And they're the same volunteers that do the same work over and over again. So strengthening the relationships between all of these clubs could serve a greater purpose in terms of collaboration, who's sharing line marking machines, all that kind of stuff. It's just, I think it's a good opportunity to bring back that council if we can.
May I respond to Councillor Butler? Councillor Butler, I think you may have been away for the meeting where this was raised, and I also raised that point about reactivating the sporting group. I think the Director of Planning was saying that the sporting, it's not a club meeting, the sporting user group meeting had lost its voice and really didn't have the whole I think in the last year, and I felt this would be a really great thing to bring to them and discuss on an individual and a collective about shared resources and how we might improve also in our grant application for grants.
Thank you, Councillor Flannery and Councillor Butler. Do I have any further comments? Okay, let's put this to the vote. All those in favour of the recommendation? That's unanimous. Thank you, Councillor. Moving on to item 6.8, the Yass Lakeside Nursery waiver of water bills. We have 3 points in that recommendation. I'd also like to note that Yass Land Care representatives visited Councillor Butler and myself for mornings with the mayor, and we're able to put this to the executive that to connect Yass Landcare with our executive to go through the issues that they were experiencing. And I'm happy to see this come so quickly forward for us. Do I have a mover of the recommendation before us? Councillor Flannery, seconded Councillor Butler. Any debate, councillors?
May I ask a question, Madam Mayor? I don't know who it's to. I assume it might be to the Director of Infrastructure and Assets. It might not be. Apologies if I'm getting that wrong. It refers in here to hot and dry years. I don't know what that means. I don't mean to be perhaps slightly silly in that, or maybe unfair. How do we define what a hot and dry year is? Given that the last 10 years have been the hottest, or 8 of the 10 hottest years on record in the region, I'm just not sure what we mean by that. Is this not, to some degree, I know we're talking about a very small amount of money at one level, but is it kind of in perpetuity suggesting that there won't have to be water paid here? Could you explain what we mean by dry and hot years?
Yep, through you, Madam Mayor. So the dry and hot year only references when the tanks are depleted, so drought conditions. So they have a supply of water on site that during the wet seasons their tanks are replenished and they don't need to have an additional water source for their plants. So we're saying that dry and hot years or drought conditions effectively they'll require an additional source.
If it's of assistance, from memory in their discussions, they used 2021 as a model for their understanding of how much water they could potentially use in a dry year, because they had that on record. My question would be around, while we are going to meter it, the connection to understand how much is going to be utilised, it looks like very little, and we're going to put a subsidy on it. How are we going to attribute this specifically to this particular catchment improvement fund if RVs also pull in and fill up water at the same location, because we're RV friendly?
Yeah, so through you, Madam Mayor, so there's a water meter on the site already. This is an additional water meter for the tank
The second one,
only.
okay, alright, thank you. Councillors, any further questions, debate? Let's put this to the vote. All those in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Item 6.9, the Transport Infrastructure Assets Capital Works Program 25 to 35. We have the proposed 10-year Capital Works Program for Transport Infrastructure Assets to be noted. Do I have a mover for that recommendation? Thank you, Councillor McGrath's got a mover from the chair and keep us hustling. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Flannery. If I could just ask the director to make any comments.
Yeah,
We haven't seen one of these for a while.
No, so through you, Madam Mayor, this is a 10-year program of the scheduled capital work, so the resealing and heavy patching program, as well as our gravel reshedding program. It will be reviewed annually as part of our operational plan, just to confirm whether or not there's been any change to what the existing program is, but this is just giving a bit of an idea of what our capital program is based on our existing expenditure over the next 10 years.
And could I ask for a comment from our CEO as well?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you. I'd just like to say this body of work has come out of listening to councillors who are, I suppose, hungry for more information around what work is being done in this transport space. Also, as part of the IPNR roadshows, again, it came up continuously through each of the roadshows. This is a matter of council asking, listening and acting from what the community have requested. As the Director has mentioned, it is very much subject to change, but it does give an indication and give an expectation, I suppose, around what people, roads, or what roads in particular, will be maintained and when. In future years, it is anticipated that this will go with the IPNR documentation from the get-go and be part of draft and part of the community consultation process. But given that this is the first one, and our budget is put forward at this point. The idea is that it will be adopted, referenced in the IPNR documents this time, and future times will go as part of draft IPNR documents.
Any further comment, councillors? Councillor
Just
Flannery.
one question on the active transport and bus infrastructure assets. Bus stops and shelters, approximately 65 stops and 15 associated shelters. Is there state funding available for the maintenance of those, and do we apply for it? And I assume that many of those stops are in Yass that serve school kids, and that part of our new development, not new, but part of the development control laws about access to bus stops, and whether developer contributions are paying for any of those, or whether, so this is two questions all a bit jumbled together, but do we apply for funding for those? Do we get it, and where do the developer contributions go to when they need to make a new bus stop? Or do they need to make a new bus stop?
Through you, Madam Mayor, so there is CPT, so it's the country transport grant funding that's available year on year, so we do put applications in for that for upgrades and or construction of new bus shelters in all of our bus stops that don't have an existing shelter. If there was a requirement for a new stop or shelter to be installed as part of a subdivision or a development, it would be up to the developer to supply that and install that as part of their development, which we would then take ownership of upon handing over.
Through you, Madam Mayor, just actually following on from Councillor Flannery's comment. So I can see that there's been $20,000 applied to the CPTs bus shelters, which is coming from a grant, did you say? That's been funded for 25-26.
Yeah.
I can't see anywhere where we've identified shelters that need repair or we need new ones. Do you have a list of those at the moment?
Through you, Madam Mayor, so that's the only confirmed CPT's funding that we know. We will be putting in applications for those in future years, we're just unable to sort of include in our budgeting at this point in time. We do have a list of all our bus shelters and what condition they're in and which ones either need replacing or upgrading, and they'll become part of a grant submission in the future.
Okay, so sorry, just the $20,000 for the 25-26, has it been expended already, or it will be?
No, 25-26 is the next financial year.
Yeah, so have we got that, we've got that money in the kitty, ready to spend on upgrading shelters that you've identified, that we have that. And so do we have, is that public knowledge, like, because we can see what the priority of the roads are and everything like that. I only say this because it's a common complaint that I get, especially in Murray Bateman, that there's a huge amount of destroyed bus shelters and kids are stuck in the rain with no roofs over them. So I'm unsure if they are on the works, and if not, how do we go about as a council? Do we just continuously recommend that the community uses Snap Send Solve to send photos of the deteriorating bus shelters to council so it can be prioritised?
Yep, that's right, you Madam Mayor, absolutely. If there's any issues with any of our bus shelters the council's not aware of, Snap Send Solve is the perfect tool to make us aware. And I will go and look into what those possibly 2 shelters are that are going to be installed next financial year, and I'll let you know.
Thank you.
Sorry, just one more question. I don't mean to labour the point about bus shelters, but they are an important asset, particularly when you're in the cold waiting for a bus. So you just mentioned that we were putting in 2 new two new bus shelters. There probably are playgrounds after a while. There could be beehives as well. 2 new bus shelters, but when we don't, the grant funding doesn't do minor upgrades, so we need to pay for the repairs ourselves, such as roofs or sides or something like that.
Through you, Madam Mayor, there's 2 different options for the CPT funding. Some is for maintenance and upgrades, others are brand new installations. So depending on what our assets are and where they're at, we will put in for both.
But the 20,000 is allocated for new bus.
I'd have to confirm that, but I would assume it'd be for 2 new bus shelters.
Okay, council, so there's no further comments, let's put that one to the vote. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Moving on to item 6.10, the Yass Water Treatment Plant Upgrade Project Implementation. We have a recommendation that report be noted. Can I have a mover? Thank you, councillor Butler. Thank you, councillor Burgess. Good.
I think I'm gonna call again.
Yeah.
I moved away.
Bloody thing for 3 weeks, so that's not gonna
Yeah, I
take.
literally moved next to him,
I've
so
moved with all these
so I thought I'm gonna move away.
We're still standing, we were with him at the workshop. Yeah. All right.
I'm stop coughing.
Councillors, this is our bi-monthly report, which gives us great visibility of this project. It's a significant project at the value of over $38 million, so the bi-monthly report is warranted. Noting nothing dramatic happening, Director?
No, you through you, Madam Mayor, so kick-off meetings now happened with the new tenderer, preparation of reference design, and we've also done some pre-inspection works up at the water treatment plant as well on the filters. So things are starting to progress, which is good news.
And that's all running as per the schedule, we're not behind in any way. Schedule's great to it. Any further comments, councillors? Let's put that to the vote, all those in favour? It's unanimous, thank you, councillors. Item 6.11 needs to go to confidential, being a tender evaluation report. So moved, councillor Burgess, seconded, councillor McGrath. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Item 6.12, council's financial future, we have a recommendation before us to receive and note the report on the financial sustainability roadmap, which is Yass Valley Council's strategy to make significant improvements towards achieving financial sustainability, and for council to endorse to place the draft financial sustainability roadmap on public exhibition for 28 days, and it calls for a further report to be provided to council for final adoption. Do I have a mover of that recommendation or an alternate? Okay, so moved councillor Cherry, seconded councillor Burgess. Councillor, I might just see if our Chief Financial Officer would like to speak to the report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So thanks for moving the report. And there's the draft financial sustainability roadmap that's within the council papers. And most of this is the same as what we presented at the workshop. One key point that we did add, and Councillor Carter did recommend, is about reviewing stage 2, or the progress of stage 2 of the program build. That's an action within the financial sustainability roadmap that we need to undertake to fit within within our financial sustainability. There's a lot of other measures that are within the roadmap, which sort of link back to the delivery program and the operational plan that we will want to undertake. Some of the work we're already doing, such as the cost attribution work that's underway. We've obviously got the organisational structure that will be talked about shortly. That helps us sort of implement some of what's in that roadmap. So I think it's, and the CEO would support, it's quite important that we need to progress this and implement the actions that are within the roadmap.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I would also reiterate the CFO's comments. Council staff have been implementing Council's resolution to develop Crago Mill, and rightfully so. But we, through the IPNR roadshow and through Council's comments, we now welcome the opportunity to do a stage 2 review as part of pulling every lever, every appropriate lever as per the OLG's request. To look at how we can maintain, or how we can get council back onto a financially sustainability pathway. So thank you for bringing that up. It does create us a legitimate window now to be able to do that body of work. So thank you.
Councillors, any further comments? Councillor Flannery.
Just raising something that I was concerned about around increasing councillor fees, which was referred to later. I understand, though I didn't hear it, but I got some comments from the community today that one of the ABC radio stations was reporting on the Yass Council raising councillor fees at a time when they were financially strapped. So I would like to try to get hold of that to see what the comments were, because apparently it was being played on ABC. Someone rang and said, I don't know if it was Canberra or where it was, but it was really just questioning why we resolved to do that. I echoed my comments at the time that I felt it was an inappropriate time to raise council fees, which was voted on last meeting, I note. But just to, I guess, reaffirm that I felt that it was the wrong move at the time. And our financial viability or sustainability, as we say, should always look to how we can minimise cost as we are.
Councillors, I note that it was raised by CPI at the last meeting and there was no motion to actually reduce it to the minimum, which was also an option that every councillor had the option to pull the lever on should they so choose. Okay, any further comments, councillors?
Make one comment about this, Madam Mayor, which is, I think it's really important, and I urge the community to understand that this is on exhibition. It will be there for 28 days. There is some really significant implications in the financial sustainability roadmap. It includes some decisions, or effective decisions in terms of the likely way that this council will go moving forward. That includes things like a plan for things like an SRV application for a rate variation and the like. And so right now is the absolute time to behove the community to make their voice known with respect to some of those particular components. I am pleased that for the first time we have taken the opportunity to understand some of the financial implications out of particularly stage 2 of the Crago Mill project. I think that's a positive move. I'm also looking forward to the opportunities to seek further feedback on that with respect to the local community. But this is right now the absolute opportune time for community members to raise their voice, to be heard, to be known with respect to what are the likely implications out of this financial sustainability roadmap. My thanks to council staff and also to the Chief Financial Officer for their significant work in trying to drive us out of what is and has been a significant financial crisis. Thanks for your
Councillors, if there's no further speakers, we'll put this to the vote. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Great. Moving on to item 6.13, a request to waive or refund a booking fee for the biggest morning tea event held at the Sutton Hall to the value of $138. And I believe there is a second point that was prepared. Is that right, Councillor Butler?
I do believe that that is correct.
Okay.
I just cannot find it at the moment.
So, Councillor Butler, can I take it that you'd be moving this
I'm happy to
one?
move that.
Okay. Second, Councillor McGrath. Thank you. Thank you.
Through you, Madam Mayor, just as that's all coming up, I wholeheartedly support the recommendation that Council approves the application to reimburse the hall hire of $148. And at the briefing, I did just raise that perhaps it was a good opportunity to ensure that Council had an underpinning document or policy that just really set out how much money we were willing to waive in times when community members are raising money for charities, and just ensuring that we were being transparent with that and being fair to everyone. So I hope that the second point captures that.
Councillor McGrath, any comments?
second that.
Any further comments? Okay, councillors, let's put this to the vote. All those in favour? That's unanimous, thank you. Moving on to item 6.14, the application to the Minister for Local Government to loan funds from the External Restricted Reserve. The recommendation before us is to note the current balance of external and internal restrictions. 2, to note the potential risk to its cash position and reserves if the advance payment of the financial assistance grants is not received at the end of June. And 3, we approve to approve for the Chief Financial Officer to write to the Minister for Local Government seeking approval for an internal loan for the sewer fund to the general fund should this be required. Councillors, that's a recommendation. Do I have a mover? So moved Councillor Carter, seconded Councillor Flannery. Councillors, I'll just take a moment to allow the CEO to explain some of the leaders in this motion.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. This is a report that we're hoping not to put up, but it's our due diligence to do so. In the past, financial assistance grants from the federal government have been paid on a quarterly basis, except for during COVID, where they started to pay upfront as 100%, and then last year as an 85% as a stimulus. Local government as a whole across New South Wales has become quite conditioned to receiving these upfront payments, and with many of councils, including Yass Valley Council, starting to rely on these upfront payments as part of our cash flow. So through discussions with the Office of Local Government, they strongly recommended that we make formal application, because it's not known yet from either the state government, as to whether the federal government will be paying those financial assistance grants upfront, or whether they will go back to a quarterly payment method. Councils would be aware that we cannot access externally restricted funds without ministerial approval, and this is our process of making sure that having a surety that we don't breach the legislation by inadvertently accessing externally restricted funds if we have a cash flow issue. So we will only, council staff will only draw on this if it's absolutely necessary. We'll hope to have the approval in our back pocket should we need it, but if we do need it, it'll be paid back at the earliest opportunity that we can with the financial assistance grants. But what we don't want to do is breach the legislation. We want to make sure that we have this mechanism in place, ready to go, should we need it as a safety net.
Councillors, I'll also note that we're not the only council to be very concerned about the timing of the financial assistance grants. It's a hot topic at most of the mayoral meetings across regional New South Wales at the moment.
So I'll ask a brief question, Madam Mayor, to the CEO. Are you able to provide us with confidence that this type of request is likely to be approved, that there have been other councils that you're aware of that have done similar things and had approval in this particular type of circumstance?
So the Office of Local Government has strongly encouraged us to apply. They are the approving body. My understanding is that the staff have ministerial delegation to approve these applications. So that would look favourably for us. But it is also my understanding that councils more broadly have been encouraged to go down this path, and we are one of them. Yeah, we've been advised that post this meeting, if we put in the application, it would be somewhere between 7 and 10 days that we could receive approval. However, nothing is guaranteed. We've still got to go through the process.
Let's go to a follow-up question to the Chief Financial Officer just around this. So I know that we're going to charge ourselves the RBA cash rate if we do take it on. Is the sewer fund held in an interest-bearing account, and if so, what would its standard interest rate be?
Thank you, Councillor, through you, Madam Mayor. So I suppose all of the funds, as you see in our investment report, sit within our NAB operating account, which is at the current RBA cash rate. And then we have the range of investments where we get between 4.2% to 5%. So if you set on average, it's probably getting about 4.3%. I'll just make the number up in my head, just calculating in my own spreadsheet. So it's a good, the sewer fund monies are part of all of that $39 million that we have currently invested.
So to clarify, there's no loss for us out of
There
this.
shouldn't be a loss.
Thank you.
No, yeah, shouldn't be more.
No, wrong question, my part.
Any further comments, speakers to the motion? Alright, let's put that to the vote. All those in favour? Unanimous. Councillors. Moving on to item 6.15, the investment and borrowing report for the period covering 1st to 31st of May 2025, to be noted. We have a mover. So moved Councillor Carter, seconded Councillor Chang. Any comments or?
Just a question, please. So can I just clarify that the implication of this table, council owns Kroger Mill funding facility, is we've now finally had a rate rise. Is that the implication of that?
What's right? A reduction?
Yes.
Yes.
By 0.2 basis points, is that right?
I believe so. That's the rate from our last statement.
And any indication that's likely to be decreased further?
I haven't, I'm still liaising with Westpac through their review of our loan facility. But as the cash rates reduce, we should be beneficiaries of that. And it goes on they talk about the BBSR, which is it's a sort of a 90-day cycle of how that variable component reduces of the loan.
I just have a follow-up question just around the investment products. We seem to have, it appears we're making more 90-day or 89-day short-term investments. Is that a deliberate choice that we're making at this point? I understand you mentioned last time that we were going to review our investment policy. Is that likely to be where we're going moving forward?
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, so we're really trying to balance our short and long-term cash requirements. So when sort of curve investments, we manage a lot of our securities plus NAB. They provide the range of rates and we try to pick the highest return, which has been between the 90 and 120 days. But we do want to sort of review sort of some longer term investments through our investment strategy so we can lock in some higher rates going forward. It's just trying to balance all of our other priorities across the spectrum of what we're doing.
And just one follow-up question finally, it's about the Kroger Mill funding facility. I thought we were supposed to have drawn down on this further. Is that just a timing question in terms of when this report was drawn up?
It is a timing question, so at the end of May, but we're expecting it'll be through this week. We will draw probably around 4.4 million from that facility. What we've done in terms of the timing is we've really reviewed our process on our approvals and our assessments, of which our CEO has just recently approved, and then we're in the process of drawing down from the facility. So we've really tightened up that review and approval process.
Thank you.
Any further questions or comments from councillors? Let's put this to the vote. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Moving on to item 6.16, the monthly financial report. The recommendation before us, councillors, that this report for May 2025 be noted. Looking for a mover, so moved Councillor Butler, seconded Councillor Carter. Any speakers to the motion?
First one question, apologies, I wasn't able to ask previous questions in relation to this. I couldn't understand the negative figure with respect to the Kroger Mill reserve, so that's, I think, on page 101 of what I'm looking at, which might be the full report. Could you just explain what that refers to?
Thank you, Councillor. So the 1.7 million, so in May we had an invoice that we paid for the progress payment on Kroger Mill. So the 4.4 million drawdown that I was talking about from the loan that I have in this week, 1 One will replenish that reserve back to zero, that's 1.7 million. And then we've got a further 2.7 million for the next payment we're making in the next 2 days. That will draw from the loan, so that reserve should be at zero. So there was about 440,000 left in that reserve at the end of April. So we sort of used some of our sort of NAB money to pay that bill that we will replenish back. Our general fund, general reserve.
Okay.
We didn't want to get penalised for paying the bill.
Understood.
Okay, councillors, if there's no further comments, we'll put that to the vote. All those in favour of the motion to report? That's unanimous. And councillors, if I could just have a motion to extend the meeting time by half an hour now, so it doesn't, we don't have to stop debate. So that will kick in at 7:54, the extra half hour. So moved Councillor Butler. And Councillor McGrath, I think, got in there. Thank you, Tony. All right, councillors, let's keep rolling. So item 6.17, the organisation structure review. We have a recommendation that we adopt the organisation structure as detailed in this report for implementation from the 1st of July, which includes the divisions of executive services, corporate and community, infrastructure and assets, and planning and environment. Do I have a motion to adopt that recommendation or an alternate? So moved Councillor Butler and seconded Councillor McGrath. Thank you, councillors. Is there any questions or comments regarding this item? Councillor Chow.
Madam Mayor, a couple of questions for the CEO, if I may. Ms Burley, thank you for your response via email. Just more so for the public record, a couple of questions that I proposed earlier via that correspondence. How can this chamber be assured that the functional responsibilities of this new directorate, particularly in areas like commercial property development, business improvement and financial sustainability, will not overlap or create duplication with the work of existing directorates?
Something that I prepared earlier. Through you, Madam Mayor. So I think for me, these three positions are key to us being able to move into a dedicated resource, being able to move into a financially sustainable future. This is one of those areas where we need to spend money to save money. And in relation to your specific question, Councillor Cherry, it's each of these roles will have clear responsibilities and accountability within their position descriptions. There are no current staff designated to performing these roles, and the roles are in addition to existing staff duties and represent a step change for the organisations in terms of being able to facilitate service reviews, develop a property strategy, progressing property for development and or sale, so achieving highest and best use scenario, facilitating SRB investigation process, overseeing consultants undertaking deep dive reviews, and tracking benefit realisation. These roles, sitting outside of the existing directorates and reporting directly to the CEO, also provides a level of scrutiny and objectivity to the work that's being undertaken. So we don't just receive more of the status quo, we're actually challenging our work practices. And further, council's traditional role in terms of property has been about the management of community land and also as a regulator. We haven't really taken on commercial property with commercial property acumen. And that, to me, is a very different skill set.
Wonderful. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a subsequent question to the CEO, if I may. Given the Executive Services Directorate is described as temporary, is there a defined timeline and performance framework in place to guide its review or determine when it may be dissolved?
Yeah, so each of these roles will have clearly defined position descriptions and work tasks, and will be advertised as a maximum 2-year contract.
reporting again directly through to me, these roles will be performance-based and outcome-driven. And through the process of benefit realisation tracking, if it's not performing, we will seek termination clauses and end of contract clauses to make sure that we're getting absolute value for money. These roles, I think the important part about these roles is that they will produce legacy strategies, systems and processes. So along the way, they'll be mentoring and developing that will build internal capacity and capabilities of existing staff to implement and progress this process for future years. So it's a short-term, I suppose, increase to upskill and increase our capacity and capability that will then be implemented over a series of multiple years thereafter.
Wonderful, thank you, Ms Burley. Madam Mayor, just final question for Ms Burley. Do you have any broader plans for organisational and structural reform at the operational level expected over the remainder of our council term?
Yes, the report includes a statement such as, once council has endorsed the high-level organisation structure, further work will continue to refine a sectional/departmental organisation structure throughout this term of council. This will take time, given our commitment to sincere and in-depth consultation and engagement with staff and unions to achieve the organisational-wide structure that is fit for purpose, enables service delivery excellence and is financially responsible. These sectional or departmental structural changes will be managed in the normal course of business by the executive and leadership teams and in line with the approved 25-26 budget and council's industrial relations obligations. The report also highlights that this work is required to address the unusually high number of staff acting in roles, along with long-term position vacancies. And I think that's a really important piece of information, is that our paper structure doesn't match our actual structure at the moment, and this is creating unnecessary discomfort and stress for staff. And so we need to go through a period. I've already spoken to the unions. We are absolutely committed to not just meeting our industrial relations obligations for consultation, but going up and beyond that. So we will be making sure that each staff member is able to review the draft structure, provide comment. We'll take that feedback, review it again, have comment before it gets implemented. So we are going up and beyond the industrial relations requirement, and I think that is pertinent on us to do so.
Councillor Flanagan.
So through you, Madam Mayor, I endorse the change. I think if you do everything the same, nothing changes. I just draw your attention, and perhaps Councillor Chari was also looking or raising this question, is around on page 106, the planning and environment contains a section, strategic planning, and I felt that we should get a bit more further clarification around roles and responsibilities in that section compared to the executive services. I know in my head they're quite different, and so that was one question around, is there going to be a further kind of
Strategic planning.
delineation of jobs.
Yep.
But I also note that from the discussion today, there are some big things on our horizon. So one, you're addressing through this improved processes, and we're seeing how well that's working in the DA area and other things. But we have the big things on our horizon, such as wind farms and some of our strategic planning documents around Murray Bateman. So where would those items fit within this structure, and do we need any capacity, say, in our planning and environment area that might assist with that?
Thank you, Councillor Flannery, and through you, Madam Mayor. The strategic planning in that context is the strategic planning work from a regulatory base, so that doesn't change. There's obviously strategic planning from a corporate, perspective, and that sits with me and sits with the executive, and also will be assisted greatly by having some additional resources in that area. They're very different aspects, so to be the strategic planning side of things is not expected to be moved, or is it a core function of the planning environment team now and will remain so. Unfortunately, the Director of Planning and Environment used to have a fully stocked strategic planning team of about 6 staff members, and at the moment we have none.
and we're using a consultant to deliver that service. So this is exactly why what the paper's saying, when I turned up and said, where are all these people, versus what's actually our resourcing on the ground is very different. And so we need to be able to reconcile those two. But in terms of strategic planning, there's no changes from a statutory perspective.
Councillor Carter.
Thanks very much, Madam Mayor. In essence, I do endorse what's proposed here. I think the broader workforce planning question is vitally important. I do note, of course, that we're due for some form of report with respect to workplace culture that we suggested earlier in July. And I suspect it's important that all of that is taken fully into account before decisions are made around issues with respect to council structure more generally. I do note that this is quite a common movement within public sector organisations recently, which is to bring effectively consultants in-house, and that appears to be what this is about. I suppose the only thing I'd note about that in mind is that planning is vital, but implementation matters more. And so whether or not we're going to get to a situation where this is fully articulated within a 2-year space is unlikely. And so, yes, we're looking at a 2-year funding question, but the reality is it's likely to require more than that in order to bring these plans to fruition as well. Can I just make a note about what has to be the worst drawn section ever in the history of law? And this is section 332 and section 333. It is really, and I must admit with great respect to the Deputy Secretary of the OLG, his letter was as clear as mud with respect to this. It's really unclear what the imposed or the suggested order is in relation to how one goes about these reviews, and that refers to the difference between the originating section 3321, the idea of 1A and also 1B. The one thing that I might suggest that might be valuable moving forward is it's implied in the conversation here, but 3321B does suggest that these should be tied to strategic priorities more directly. I think they're implied within the document, but it would be good to actually have those outlined a little bit more in depth within a paper like this moving forward. I realise we're supposed to do this within 12 months under section 333, but there is an interrelationship between 322 and 333. It would be better perhaps if the order was clarified by government, but that's outside our realm.
Thank you, Councillor Carlin, through you, Madam Mayor. It is quite challenging, and hence the reason why I made sure that I had clarity from the Office of Local Government around this, and I know that we're not the only council that has sought clarity on this matter. And in terms of these positions, I think the strategic tie is the financial sustainability roadmap. That is the delivery or the implementation and delivery of that financial sustainability roadmap is key to us moving forward, and that is their focus and strategic tie.
Councillors, any further comment? Councillors, I would just like to commend our CEO for her work in this space. It's a bold but sensible move to plug in extra resources to really strike out on some of these issues that we need to get on top of. And I commend the work that's actually going to specifically sort out what our staff are doing in the right roles with the right titles and the right remuneration to reflect it. This really indicates that our CEO cares for her team and has acknowledged the stress that acting in roles for many years can give. And these things matter to our team, and I really want to commend what she's done here. I congratulate her. Right, councillors, let's put this motion to the vote. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. On to 6.18, our 25-26 integrated planning and reporting documents. It's the big one. Can I have a mover for the recommendation before us, councillors? So moved, Councillor Grant. Seconded, Councillor Butler. I might just give an opportunity for our CEO to speak to the body of work that's just been achieved. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. Firstly and foremost, I would like to thank the executive team, including our CFO, in the delivery of these documents. They have been absolutely huge. I will say when I landed at Yass Valley Council, and I knew this was obviously on the agenda because it is for all councils, it was quite daunting, but it ended up being an absolute blessing in disguise. I've said this before, but to be able to go out to the community as part of our roadshow, meet the community and hear what they had to say has been a real pleasure. The community has been very engaged. For us to receive 50 odd applications is very, very significant. There is many councils with double our population with nowhere near that many submissions. And I think that's testament to the passion of our community, but also the engagement and the presentations and the promotion of these documents by council, as well as the council laws. So I do thank you very much for that. We had, I appreciate the council enabled myself to have an extraordinary meeting to make sure that the first draft of the documents were of a robust nature. We were able to then to have really good community consultation and discussion and receive those feedback which have ultimately shaped our revised documents moving forward. And councillors should be able to see within the report where changes have been made as outlined, where the community has provided that detailed information and council has considered it. The report highlights key themes, but post this meeting we will be writing to and publishing detailed feedback on each of the submissions so that people can see the closure of the feedback loop and be assured that their submission was thoroughly read and also responded to as part of the IPR documents.
Any further comments, councillors?
Can I just endorse the significant work of council in doing this? My thanks to all those involved. Also to those councillors who were able to attend the many workshops. From all intents and purposes, it has been, I think, a positive experience, which is not always one can say about IPR. So, largely because no one really understands what it means, but it's really positive to see that our community has responded, and in that sense, my thanks to those who have been involved in the process.
I'd like to acknowledge the advocacy of the Gundaroo community, who stressed, it was actually during our lead up to the election, their need for a return to some block funding, so their time is better spent looking after the assets out there that we don't actually look after. So I was delighted to see the line item return, 15K for the Gundaroo community. Yep. And some of the improvements suggested made a lot of sense and it was reflective, I think, of a community that has seen things done better elsewhere or seen us do better in the past and want to return to that. And one of them was a very simple suggestion of power washing the main street footpaths and furniture. And I was checking in with our CEO to check if that does it need a line item, can we do it in-house?
Yep. Through you, Madam Mayor, we can do that through our operational budget. The Director of Infrastructure and I have had a few discussions and we'll aim to do that at least twice a year within the Yass seat.
Can I ask a question about that? Because it's something that I've often felt about Yass, that the walkways are pretty grotty and we could do some low, I know there's a master plan, but we could do some low intervention.
Yes.
But I also urge us to speak to the shop owners outside who have very dirty and see, because they're using public space, that they should, included in their permit to use the public space should be some kind of cleaning regime.
Councillor Flannery, absolutely, but thank you for raising it. I would also suggest that we wouldn't do it for a few months' time in case it freezes over. Yes, it's quite the hazard. So,
well, I mean, before or after the street parade would be an ideal time, but just to encourage, I also I think I raised about, an occasional clean at the windows or something like that. I know you can't force these things and people have different service levels in mind, but see some really filthy windows when you walk into them always seems to me a bit like.
Yep. And I just want to reflect that anything that council does to lift community pride in our town and be a tidy town has a flow-on effect, and that if we set that standard, then I'm hopeful that that will increase both local businesses and residents to do the same. And I'd like to thank the community for the submissions as well, and their attendance at the roadshows. I think we got over 20% of the population at Yass, about 25, sorry, 25, okay, I'm underselling it.
Did
Right.
and there wasn't much on anybody just for that night, or? I would say that retracted, floppy just.
We were very,
I know that.
we were very grateful for them coming out, and a lot of great suggestions from them. Councillors, any further comments? Just noting that we are setting the rates as part of this, and we have a review coming up that we will have to get our teeth into, so that we know what we're doing in November as well on that issue. Alright, councillors, let's put this
I'm
to
sorry, could you just clarify what you just said, Madam Mayor, that's so.
So we're setting the rates at this point in time, and if there was going to be an SRD, a whole body of work would have been needed to have been done prior to that and flagged in November of last year for us to have done that. So we're setting the rates with just the CPI.
So then, so effectively.
That's for the next 12 months,
yes.
the rates are set.
Great,
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Alright, councillors, let's put this to the vote. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Moving on to item 7.1, we are up to motions. Councillors, I have a motion that I'm putting before you so that we can be fully armed with information on the renewable energy development scene. The motion for you is that a report be provided to the Ordinary Council meeting of July, and we're looking for the following information: the number of renewable energy developments constructed in the Yass Valley local government area, the number of renewable energy developments with approved consent in the Yass Valley local government area, and the number of known renewable energy development companies currently undertaking investigations for potential further developments within Yass Valley local government area, and what council's role is within the renewable energy development planning framework. And at what point within this framework does council have an opportunity to request cooperation to the Secretary of Environmental Assessment Climate Seers or provide comment to a project, and what further advocacy work can be done for residents and existing local businesses that may be significantly impacted by the proposed renewable energy developments. So that's the motion that I have before us. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Butler. Councillors, just briefly, as we've seen from the Mayoral Minute, we have growing community concerns, not just for the wind turbines, but we've also, we're seeing battery energy storage systems as part of that or stand alone. And all of that needs to come with the connecting high tension transmission lines. And a lot of these projects are being currently scoped in Yass Valley, but with not a lot of information flowing to us. And just one example of that is the Bondo project, which straddles both Yass Valley and the Snowy Valleys. And that is over 150 turbines, and they held a community engagement session in Chimit. So I had the opportunity to talk with some of the locals out at Jasper during our IPNR session, and they did indicate that some of those representatives had visited individual landowners, but we've yet to have an actual community meeting in Jasper to be very visible from that company. And that's certainly one that concerns me, given that it's proposed to be inside the Jasper forest and could stretch all the way down to Denman Prospect, opposite the ACT border, which is a significant fire risk. And the some volunteers from the Jasper Rural Fire Brigade were there at the IPNR session, and they had grave concerns for how they would actually fight any fire with that kind of project in the adjustment. Yeah. Councillor Butler, question?
Sorry. We are not recognised we are non-renewable energy zone. Who dictates that? Who states that we are not, that zone? And can that be changed, like at any point in time, by the government? You can get back to me on this one.
I'd have to take the last bit on notice unless our director knows.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the Department of Planning to determine the res. And I think that would have to be a conversation with the department around whether that could change, but you also have to consider the implications of that as well. So just let me do some research in relation to the notice of motion and come back to you.
At a recent meeting of the 5 mayors impacted by Humley, we were able to ask the question of the Energy Minister, Minister Fisher, whether it was advisable to leave a renewable energy zone with this coming in, and her answer was in the negative, that wouldn't be, and I suspect that could be because it would prioritise renewable energy projects as the priority for that region. Certainly the Regional Development Australia, New South Wales, Southern New South Wales ACT branch are compiling a report to go to the state government, which is really showing up how the level of community engagement conducted by renewable energy proponents, what they're getting away with in non-res is quite astounding in terms of the community not being fully informed and the ticker box. So I'm looking forward to reading that report, but that's being flagged by both Rowena, Abby the Chair, and the CEO, Olivia West, that's a body of work that they're hoping to have complete by July. Councillor Flannery, did I see?
Well, I was just going to ask a question I probably worked out myself. Point D, what is council's role? So what council's role is within the renewable energy development planning framework? I assume that that's an actual framework, like it's a noun. It exists. And it's just for me asking a point of clarification, so it's a framework, so it should be in capitals, renewable energy development planning framework, because then it becomes an acronym. Is that correct?
No.
No, it's not?
The RES is a renewable energy zone is I think like a noun, but I think the renewable energy development planning framework is just a reference to the framework relating to this type of development.
Okay, so what council's role is within the renewable energy development planning framework, and what point within this framework? You sure it's not a framework, like an actual recognised I'm sorry, it's just I'm just trying to understand.
Yes.
If it's a formal thing, if there's a framework and it's a state recognised or whatever recognised, sorry, I need to keep saying.
If you're talking as standard.
If it's a recognised framework, we should state it as a recognised framework and what level of government it is a framework within. And if it's not, then I don't know what we're talking about.
Through you, Madam Mayor. So these renewable energy projects are actually coming to the major projects state significant development. There was a councillor, one of your fortnightly newsletters where I provided a flowchart and referred you to a website that talks about major projects and the process that they go through. Obviously I can't speak for the Mayor, but I understand this to be what is the process essentially for planning applications that relate to renewable energy and how they dealt with. So if I was going to answer that, I would say that is through the state significant development process. Renewable energy development planning framework, I think it's just a reference to what type of application that might be within the planning framework and the types of matters that are likely to be considered.
And I guess I understand the essence of what it's trying to say. It's just that I think we should be quite specific about what we're trying to do. And so, my request is that we name what we're trying to check. And we're clear about what it is and which level of government it is, otherwise people might have a different interpretation.
Okay. Happy to alter it to have within the the Renewable Energy Development New South Wales planning framework. It's my understanding that this might actually, like the flow of where we sit in this role might change depending on how many submissions or whether council has lodged a formal objection, because we may present to any hearings or we might provide a written response to any hearings, which has happened in the past with the Robert Wallaroo Solar Farm and the Sutton Solar Farm. So, yeah,
I was really just saying, I was trying to work out where the if it was a framework level of government, what it was called, and so therefore, just to check, to be specific about it. Oh, you don't need that, Sis?
I'm bloody freezing.
Oh my God. It's cold. Do we not have a
Freezing.
next time?
We're gonna finish soon.
Yeah, are we?
Okay, alright, let's keep going. So I'm happy to have that adjustment.
Could I add just a further point of amendment potentially you might want to think about, which is that council reflects on lessons learned from the withdrawn NG solar farm project, because I think that also is quite an interesting learning process for us, and ultimately what kind of won there was community dissent. So I think we should probably reflect on that. So I'm not sure if you're minded to amend your potential motion.
Council reflects on, was it our lessons or
Council reflects on lessons learned from the withdrawn NG solar farm project.
NRG.
NG.
Yeah, NRG.
Yeah.
I don't know. I know what you're talking about.
It's capital E and
Sorry.
do you want to make it learn from previous state significant developments within Yass Valley, and that way we can unpack what didn't work with other ones and what did work with this one. Yeah. So Councillor reflects on lessons learned from
Do you want the blanket?
state significant, so SSD reflects on lessons learned from state significant developments, or SSD. Within Yass Valley.
that have not proceeded or been.
From previous proposed SSDs. So reflects on lessons learned from previous proposed SSDs. Within the Yass Valley.
Just these state significant developments done to that SSD.
Okay.
Yes, that have been withdrawn, or
Sorry?
that have been withdrawn or have not proceeded.
Okay.
I think there's only been one that's been withdrawn.
I would probably broaden this to not just yes, then.
Well, that's the one in Queensland, so okay, we'll just take Yass Valley out. I'm so sorry.
Thank you so much.
All right,
Sorry?
all right.
Yeah.
Because the only energy regulator here, I can, right.
I'll do A to D. Yeah.
You're hearing this, you're gonna have to picture it.
I'm not happy to. I've got that other previous.
Actually, you could probably just like Google it.
Well, I mean, it's quite really.
All right.
Mental health concern, for example, local residents, they can't see them.
Alright, councillors, let's look lively, we've got less than half an hour now. Any further comments to the vote, all those in favour? Thank you, councillors, that's unanimous. Moving on to minutes of the Murray Bateman BMX Pump Track Focus Group held on the 29th of May 2025. We have a recommendation that the minutes be noted. So moved Councillor Butler. Seconded Councillor McGrath. Councillor Butler, any comments?
Through you, Madam Mayor. It was a really good meeting. I just note that Councillor Cherry was an apology at that meeting, and Councillor Rothwell, who chaired it, is not here tonight. However, I was there, Ms. Julie Costa was there. I think we were incredibly lucky to have such a broad skill set range of members of the group. That brought a lot of information to the session. And yeah, I think the meeting went really well.
Thank you, Councillor Butler. Any further comments? Let's put that to the vote. All those in favour? So moved. Unanimous. Right. 9.2, the draft minutes of the CRJO Joint Audit Risk and Improvement Committee. We have a recommendation that these minutes be received. So moved Councillor Carter, seconded Councillor Flannery. Any comments, Councillor Carter?
Yeah, can I just say that this was actually posted in Yass Valley. I think that the ARIC committee was generally impressed by the number, well, the executive turned up en masse, which was, I think, appreciated. There were good answers to multiple questions that were raised, and generally the ARIC committee was happy with the direction that elements were moving in. I think they would be excited by issues such as the sustainability roadmap that we have presented as well. So in that sense, this continues to be an important committee for us, and I think providing important insights into our overarching questions. I'm not sure what the right forum is. Unfortunately, I can't attend the next meeting, so I'm wondering if we can find someone who's able to attend on the 1st of July for us.
I'm looking into seeing if I can attend. I'll report back.
Thank you, that's appropriate. I'll query the governance on that later. We don't have to decide on that. Yeah. Okay. All right, thank you, councillors. Any further comments? No, all those in favour? That's unanimous, thank you. Moving on to item 9.3, the minutes of the Yass Redevelopment Project Committee held on 11th of June 2025. We have a recommendation before us, councillors. Yeah, Councillor Chan. And seconded, Councillor Carter. Councillors, any comments?
Yes, Madam Mayor, as chair of that committee, I'm extremely appreciative of the input from the directors tomorrow night who attend the meeting with myself, Councillor Carter, and obviously Councillor Flannery can attend issues overseas. Clearly a couple of points that came out there that are in front of us, I'm fully supportive of. And the way in which we found that solution, I put that down to the way that Julie handled it was fantastic, and I really appreciate her input there. There is one point that I'd like to flag for this particular, the minutes of the meeting. I've been contacted by Mr. Hugh Ranger, who's the president of the Yass Swim Club, who I do believe has been re-elected as the president of the swim club at their recent AGM. He's approached me because he's read the minutes and he wishes to make a couple of amendments, and I said to him, I consulted with Councillor Carter, the other member that was there that night, and I'll forward it on to the directors post this meeting, of course. And then I told them that at our next committee meeting we can discuss that and then amend the meetings, and then that we can bring that for noting at our subsequent council meeting. Just a very minor amendment, it just captures the essence of the discussion and the decisions that the council made, the committee made. And I appreciate, as I said, the input from the directors. Thank you.
Any further comments, councillors? Okay, let's put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Right, councillors, that ends our public component of the meeting. I note that there is no one to ask if they need to speak to. It'll be a long one, if it was, sorry. Okay, so we will return to give the results of the confidential part of the meeting in a short amount of time. But we'll need to close our meeting now and end our live stream. Thank you to anyone who's been watching. I just need to move it to bring us out of confidential, also moved councillor Carter, councillor McGrath. Yep. Okay, we're now coming out of our confidential, where I can advise that the tender submitted by Pacific Coast Contracting for the water main upgrade along Yass Valley Way, contract YVCIA 332024, be accepted for a total cost of $287,661.25 excluding GST, and that a provisional sum of $10,000 excluding GST is allocated to the project. And that concludes our meeting. Thank you, councillors.